Hi. I'm going to call the meeting to order, the public session to order. I'd like to say good morning. My name is Adele Imrie, and I chair the board of Toronto Community Housing Corporation. Today's meeting is a hybrid meeting, which is taking place in Committee Room 2 at City Hall virtually using our WebEx platform, and we are also live streaming today on YouTube. I would like to begin with an acknowledgement that the land we are all on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We also acknowledge all treaty people, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants, either in this generation or in generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. We pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. I would like to note that July is Disability Pride Month. The Toronto Community Housing Corporation is proud to support thousands of residents with disabilities, working to make public housing more accessible to them and their families. TCHC's accessibility build standards are a set of guidelines co-authored with RPath, a resident-led committee that has become a leader in advocating tenants with physical disabilities and creating accessibility solutions that work. The accessibility build standard goes above and beyond the minimum legal requirements of the Ontario Building Code and is better able to accommodate modern mobility devices. Disability Pride Month recognizes and celebrates the diverse identities, contributions, struggles, and lived experiences of people with disabilities. The month aims to change the way people think about disabilities and promote all types of disability as a natural part of human diversity, acknowledging and honoring the valuable contribution of this community. I would also like to say that on July 9th, Federal Housing Minister Gregor Robertson and Etobicoke North MP John Sirasuli led the official grand reopening of 50 Torbolton. They were joined by Deputy Mayor Amber Morley, Councillor Vince Crisanti, Sean, and many TCHC staff. I had the pleasure of attending this event in person along with Vanita, our Vice Chair. Torbolton includes 17 three-bedroom townhouses and has been certified as a passive house, a building standard that requires it to consume 90% less energy than conventional buildings, which will in turn reduce utility costs to the tenants. Also in attendance was Bruce Squires, the president and CEO of Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Centre, and TCHC's latest partner. Together, TCHC and Holland Bloorview will partner to make 50 Torbolton a community that is inclusive and welcoming for families of children with developmental disabilities. This project and its reopening shows the positive direction that TCHC is moving in to deliver new housing to the people of Toronto and to form innovative partnerships that lead to better services for families and children. I was also very pleased that the project received national media coverage, as it is a meaningful example of what can be provided for tenants beyond just housing by social housing providers. I'd like to congratulate all staff involved in this project, with particular recognition of Zainab Godwin, Kevin Leonard, Charlotte Taylor, and John Perkovic, and the West Building team. They're all from Ops, Reza Hamidi, Adam Pilicero, Katrina Piers, and Daisy Wong from Facility Management for their leadership in getting this project to a very successful conclusion. I would also like to thank Adam and Riza for taking Vanita and I on a tour of the project after the ceremony. They identified all the energy and savings features of the construction, and we saw the gravel-filled basement, which allows water to pass under the building instead of backing up into the units. This project sits on a floodplain and has been shuttered since 2008 because of persistent flooding. This creative TCHC solution, it doesn't eliminate the chance of flooding, but certainly does mitigate the damages. That enables TCHC to provide renovated housing faster and less costly than building new. So I think this was a very innovative project and one that TCHC should be very proud of. So I congratulate all staff that are involved, and I wish the new residents of 50 Tor Bolton well on behalf of the board as they move in August and bring new life to this community that has been shuttered for a very long time. I'd also like to welcome Tara Anderson, the Auditor General, who is joining us today to provide a presentation on the report titled Ensuring Social Housing Tenants Have Homes in Good Repair, the Challenge of Limited Funding, an audit of Toronto Community Housing Corporation Building Capital Repair Planning. I would like to thank the Auditor General and her team for their support of TCHC, and we'll hear her later in the meeting. My last item is on June 25th. I had the pleasure of attending the celebrations of the recipients of the Investing in Our Diversity scholarships. It was an inspiring and very entertaining event, honoring 38 well-deserving, talented students from our communities. These students will go on to 15 different colleges and universities across Canada, pursuing education in a variety of fields, including psychology, pharmacy, law, and many others. It was also an opportunity to recognize Gail Johnson, who was the manager of community safety support, who retired after 40 years with TCHC. And the board certainly appreciates Gail's service, and we hope that she's enjoying her retirement. The IIODS scholarships were started by Bill McMurtry, founding partner of Blaney McMurtry LLP, and Kevin Lee, former ED of Scadding Court Community Centre in 2001, and TCHC became a partner in 2006. The scholarships are supported by 10 very generous donors, and I'm pleased to say that the Board of Governors has shown incredible support to add a TCHC Board of Directors scholarship next year. And we will be working with TCHC staff to finalize the scholarships. And now that I've said that in public, we actually have to make this happen. So I would like to thank my fellow board members for their very quick and generous support of this initiative. So thank you. I'd also like to congratulate Arsima Bahrain, Raquel Nelson, Fiona Griffith, and Stacey Golding, and the whole IIODS scholarship team for a great event, but more importantly, for their continued commitment to our talented young people year after year. You're providing a significant opportunity for these scholarship winners to go forward and make a real difference in their communities. I am pleased to share a video of this IIODS event with you today so you get a sense of the celebration of these 38 students who were awarded scholarships this year as they exemplify the talent and energy of the young people across the TCHC portfolio. And I would ask that we start the video so that you can hear more about these award winners, and look forward to watching it with you. I'm actually sorry that you didn't get to actually hear from the award winners. The pictures are great. These are amazing young people, and what they're giving back to their communities is absolutely incredible, in addition to their studies and the work that they're doing. So I do hope that when we have our TCHC Board of Directors Scholarship Award next year, that more of you will be able to attend, and so you can actually hear from these students. They're very inspiring. The talent and potential in that room is amazing. So that concludes my remarks, and I'd like to thank everybody for attending today's meeting, and we are going to move on to the agenda. So can I ask if there are any additions or deletions to today's agenda? Okay, hearing none, can I ask if there are any conflicts of interest as it relates to today's agenda? And I'm trying to find my papers. So we are pulling items 5, 8G, 9A, and 11, which are being held for deputation. Item 6 is being held for presentation and deputation, and 9A is being held for presentation. So beyond that, can I ask if any board members have any other items that they would like to pull for further discussion? Dan?
Item 7 and 8C.
7 and 8C. Are there any other items that, Nick?
9B, please.
9B, 9. Yeah. Any other items? Okay. I would like to pull 8A and B. 10A. Okay. That's it. I don't know, Vanita, you're doing a lot of scrolling there. So I'm 8A. You want, sorry, Debbie, C? 8C, yeah, Dan. Yeah, I'll put your name. And sorry, what was the last item? Yes, there's a deputation on, no, 8C has been added, and 11 is a deputation. Was that? Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Oh, sorry, 2. I just wanted to correct that, the approval in the minutes. So I'm pulling 2 as well. Sorry. So can I have a motion to approve the agenda, excluding items 2, 5, 6, 7, 8A, B, and C, G, 9A and B, 10A, 11, and that's it. It would have been easier for me to read the other items, I think. Motion, Vanita, thank you. A seconder, Debbie, thank you. All in favor? Perfect. Item number 2, I don't have the page, but there was a, in the notes, it indicates that it's page 13, that we indicated that we approved the $14,000 amendment, which was not in fact approved. It's being considered by finance. So I think there may be another adjustment as it relates to that item. So I'd just like the minutes to be amended to reflect that. Are there any other questions or comments on the minutes from our June 23rd meeting? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Vanita, Nick, seconder, thank you. All in favor? Okay, motion passed. Thank you. We have a deputation on item number 5, which is Joy Robertson. She's online?
Yep, I'm here, present.
Thank you. Would you like to go ahead?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So my name is Joy Robertson. I am president of Scarborough Residents Unite, which is a neighborhood association here in Scarborough Southwest. For the most part, collaborated very favorably with Toronto Community Housing, and we've had many progress, lots of progress in making sure that things work smoothly for the benefit of tenants and our partners, as well as the community of a whole. As a matter of fact, I basically had quite a positive experience with Toronto Community Housing thus far, especially the community engagement aspect of Toronto Community Housing. Until very recently, when basically had some concerns regarding new management at a particular location where I advocated for tenants. Now, since this item is regarding RGI, I would like to identify some of the items
Sorry,
that
Joy.
were brought forward.
Sorry, I
Yes.
don't mean to interrupt, but could you tell me which action item you're speaking to?
Okay, so this is action item number 5-1 regarding RGI.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, so there were some questionable conduct regarding the RGI, and I do believe that this needs some very important work in terms of building resident capacity and making sure that tenants understand what's happening with the RGI, and especially in calculation with the arrears. And this is in keeping with the topic at hand. Now, the RGI arrears, we're finding that tenants, first of all, don't understand why some of them have arrears. I think there needs to be a lot more explanation given to tenants. I found that when tenants question the staff, they get feedback like, things that like, because we said so, they're actually being asked to submit things over and over and over, to the point that tenants are exhausted. Also, there's quite a lot of repeated RGIs. For instance, if management leave, if there's a management that left, and then there's new management. So instead of proper transfer from management to management, the tenants appear to have to be, picking up the slack and asked to do repeated reviews. Now, when tenants question why there's a difference between one management calculation and the new management, especially, if they were basically following the old management and what their calculations were, basically you're just being told to, not ask any questions. So the concerns there is that not only are tenants being singled out when they ask questions, but they're being told basically to that this is what they're asking and this is what you need to supply. I mean, without any further explanation. I think, we need to treat the tenants a little with a little more respect and with a little more transparency. I think the RGI should not be weaponized. I think if tenants ask questions about the RGI calculation, they should be given an explanation and ensure that the tenants understand what's happening on their files. Also, there's when some of the RGI arrears appear on your account, tenants are showing that there's like a miscellaneous label to it. Anyone in office practice or anyone who has done some type of bookkeeping would understand that miscellaneous is not a good enough explanation.
Joy,
So-
your time is up. So could I ask that you wrap this up?
Sure.
Please.
So my recommendations is that tenants are treated equally despite backgrounds, that tenants are not bullied after asking questions, and that tenants are given enough time to provide documents
Thank you.
when these things happen.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the deputant? Brian? I think you're on mute, Brian.
Just whether this issue has been raised with Mary at Tenant Services Committee, and maybe that's a good place to start to see if there are any changes that can be made. And I guess I have a secondary question going back to Sean and maybe Nadia, whether the workshop we attended last year at OMFA on the Ottawa process, whether there's been any movement forward in looking at that to address this type of concern that Joy's raised.
So can I ask Mary to answer your first question, and then we can excuse the deputant, and Nadia can answer your second question, Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Adele. No, it hasn't been raised, at least in this way, and certainly it could be, sure. And I think it's probably the proper place for it to be raised.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Dan, you have a question for the deputant?
Yes, and Joy, thank you for being a volunteer in Scarborough. I know the efforts people like yourself put in. I'm wondering if you're aware of the current complaints policy, and I'm wondering if you're aware that the Tenant Advisory Committee is now looking at draft plans for a revised complaints policy, and perhaps you might like to take a look at that sometime.
Noted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll say thank you to the deputant. I don't know who wants to address Brian's second question.
So through the chair, thank you for the question. We will be bringing a more comprehensive response in Q4. We have already initiated contact with Ottawa Community Housing, and we're learning from their best practices and some of the things that they're learning as they go on. And so they've provided some advice to us. We are working to figure out how it aligns with some of our own internal strategies and policies. And so the hope is that we bring a more fulsome discussion to December board, but we will be working through Tenant Services Committee as well as BIFAC before hitting board.
Thank you. Uba?
Thank you, Adele. Good morning, everyone. I was wondering if not only one particular area, but across the board. If tenants can be trained on how to do proper calculation. But some people seem to be confused, and I heard this from a previous conversations where tenants are complaining about certain issues, such as not understanding how the calculation is done. So is it possible to train them?
So through the chair, I would say that we are working on a communication plan to actually advise tenants on what the expectations are and how they could work with us to get their rent calculations in on time. So that is something that we're exploring. I don't think we've gotten as far as workshops, but certainly we're interested in providing tenants with as much information to make the process easier for them. So I will take that offline with my team to see if we could integrate some workshops with tenants as well.
Great. Okay. Theo, are there any other questions? So my only question on the action items is related to the AG. I don't have the number. It's in the city directions, and it talks about quarterly reporting to the AG on, this is an old, it's like a review from 2021. Do we do quarterly reporting to the AG?
Through the chair, so the audits that have been conducted through the AG, there is an online portal where staff have access and provide updates as they arise. The majority of outstanding action items are tracking for end of the year, so we'll make sure that those updates are inputted into the AG portal by then.
Okay, so it's not a formal quarterly reporting.
Not formal by any means, but the updates are provided as they're completed to the AG.
Okay.
May I just add, there is a formal process. So the updates are provided as we have them available. They'll go into the portal, and then the Auditor General's office has a formal process whereby they go and review those and ensure that there's proper evidence that they can sign off on.
Yes, and I guess I'm comparing it to what we do for the Ombudsman, which is a very strict quarterly report. My only question is, I would like to include something so that the board gets an update, because there's, I think, 3 that have been completed and 7, and it's from 2021. And in light of a new AG audit or review today, I would like formal reporting so that the board is well aware of how this, so we can do this through, I don't know which committee. Anyway, we can discuss that offline, but I would like regular reporting.
No, I think we should, so through the chair, I think we should clarify the level of reporting that does exist, because there is, I believe there's an annual report back on all audit items, including AG items that comes
And where does that go?
by fact, does it not?
Yeah, it's through the chairs come to BIFAC. So it's part of our process improvement measures. So starting from September, BIFAC and also the board, all the open audit items, including internal audit and also the AG or external like accountability officers and ombudsman, will be reported through the internal audit team and also divisions to BIFAC to start with, and then roll up to the board.
They roll up to the board?
Yeah, it will be, starting from September.
Oh, will be.
Yeah, will be, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I haven't, okay, so I do not read the BIFAC materials unless I'm asked to, unless they come to the board. So I'll look at what you provide to BIFAC. And yes, I would appreciate that they do come to the board going forward.
We can certainly take that into account in our work plan design.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that would include the new report and investigation.
That is correct. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. So can I, if there's no other questions, can I have a motion to receive the action item list? Anita, Debbie, thank you. All in favor? So we will move on to item number 6. And I would like to welcome Tara Anderson, our Auditor General, Ina Chan, who's the Deputy Auditor General. I understand Patricia Lee, who's the Senior Audit Manager, Elaine Wu, Audit Manager, and Vivian Chen, the Auditor, are all here to present item number 6, ensuring social housing tenants have homes in good repair, the challenge of limited funding. And thank you very much for coming, and we do appreciate your support of TCHC. We have 2 deputations on this matter, so I will ask Joy Robertson first. Joy?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to commend TCHC on this aspect and on this item because we've seen significant change, and I personally specifically value the fact that you have used in some cases some tenants, some youth in our midst. So I really commend that. And I hope that to see that continues, maybe there's more involvement in tenants participating in more meaningful ways like that. I would also like to point out that there were some follow-up. There was follow-up after the good repair. And tenants were asked what are some of the main issues on that day during the meeting. Tenants basically pointed out things like the door that was changed, for instance, is less secure than the previous door. Now, that's a safety concern. And what we've noticed is that those measures, safety concerns, some of it hasn't been addressed still. But I believe some things that could improve is that what I noted was that there was no follow-up, there was no minutes of meetings sent back to tenants, and there were no action items. So in the tenants meetings, they're different. There's not like this one you have, it's not professional, it's not very professional. So there's no feedback given in action items, and I think that needs to be noted. And moving forward, we need to follow that professional standard for tenants as well, not just, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Joy. The second deputation is from Miguel.
Turn on my mic, and what time we can start the time now. So good morning, everybody. I see a lot of people in the crowd, which is very interesting because not often it happens. So I'm here to speak on the Auditor General recommendations of the state of good repair, how we are communicating, how much perhaps money we're going to need in the future. I don't see my iPad on the screen, by the way. Is there somebody in that room that can fix that problem, please? Jamal, anybody? Technical problem, sorry. Can you hold my time, please?
Pardon? There's no technician in the
There's
room.
no technician?
No, there doesn't appear to be,
What?
Miguel. So can you just speak to the items?
Okay, so there's no technician. All right, so last week I came to talk to Mayor Chow on item EX 33.3, Toronto Community Housing Corporation Annual General Meeting and 2025 Audit Consolidated Financial Statements.
Yes, this is on.
So I spoke on that matter.
Excuse me? I just want to make sure you're speaking to the Auditor General's report that's before the board today. The AGM is not before the board today.
So you cannot address my mental health disabilities by not allowing me to show the graphics, because that's how I communicate, through graphics. It's so important that I communicate because that's my mental health disability.
Okay, I'm sorry there's no technician here.
There's no technicians. That's very shameful, by the way. That's very shameful in this time and age.
It's
That, you know,
city staff. It
can
has
we,
nothing to
can
do
we
with
put
us.
my deputation after the presentation? Maybe city staff will come to work. Can we
Okay.
do that?
Can you not just speak to it, Miguel?
I have some graphics to show. I'm sorry. Can we,
Debbie?
can I speak after the?
Miguel, I think we are also asking if you're speaking to the right issue that's before us today, which is the Auditor General's report and not the annual general meeting,
Why can I allowed to show me pictures?
because we don't have a technician who can support you.
So
I
my
think the technician
recommendation,
is city staff.
let's de-escalate the situation, okay? Let's de-escalate. I know you're anxious to continue with your meeting. I understand that. But there is a technical difficulty and there is an issue of human rights, accommodations. That's why we got this equipment, my friend. This equipment is not for decoration purposes. It's for people who have disabilities to be able to communicate to the rest of the people.
Miguel,
Yes?
we absolutely agree that accessibility and you being able to present in the way that is best for you is paramount. However, we do not have a city staff right now, but there's a second issue. There's a question about whether or not you are speaking to the right agenda item.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so
I'm
that's
speaking
number
on
one
the
question.
item.
And
I am
so-
right on the topic.
Yeah.
But I
So
can't
Miguel,
do
can
it
you
without
come
the
back?
use of this display facility.
I'm not sure how we can find a,
How about if I speak after the presentation of
Miguel,
the
just a minute,
Auditor
please,
General?
because TCHC does not control city staff.
Yeah,
That is my recommendation. Come on, it's acceptable. Let's wait.
Okay.
Maybe somebody will call the
Adele,
the
this is
city
your call.
department, the city clerk's office. Maybe they're on a union break. I don't know.
I do not know.
We do
I
not
just know
know.
they're not
We do not
here,
know.
and I'm
Yeah.
very sorry.
So
So,
allow me to communicate using human rights accommodations, please.
Miguel, we absolutely want to
Okay.
accommodate you.
Miguel, sorry. So now so apparently the city is short-staffed. There is no one who's assigned to this room today. So I'm very sorry that we can't display your,
This is your employer. This is your employer.
it has nothing to do with TCHC. I'm sorry,
This is
sir.
the city.
But we're not going to be able to accommodate you.
So
So
human rights doesn't matter?
it
Is that what
does
you're
matter,
saying?
but we have no control over city staffing. So I'm sorry, as much as we would like to accommodate you, if you would like to verbally give your deputation, then.
Okay, for the record, I want to say that I submitted my deputation to the mail, and I copy on that email, so that you have received my written deputation.
Okay. And that's been communicated to all board members.
Wonderful. Then they know what I'm talking about.
Okay?
Okay, that helps a lot.
Thank you.
That really helps a lot.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, so can we start my time again?
No,
No. Okay. Just say very clearly, very quickly. There was a story on the Toronto Star about some expenses that is happening with
Yes,
TCHC.
that has nothing to do with
Okay,
the Auditor
so
General's report.
It recommends, perhaps some more prudence how we
Okay.
spending taxpayers' money.
Yes, thank you. That's not speaking to the Auditor General's report.
That is speaking about how are we communicating this state of good repair. Oh, I see one person who just arrived. Maybe it's a city employee. He finished his union break finally. So difficult to deal with the corporation, eh? I love to come to this place. 16 years, by the way.
Okay, Miguel, I will ask you to speak to only the Auditor General's
Okay,
report.
so, you're sending...
Item number 6, it's
Just-
not about the STAR article on expenses. She was not auditing anything that related to expenses. It's just SOGR processes.
Nothing, okay, here you go.
And it's not on, the AGM
It's
is
not
not
the
on our
AGM?
agenda.
Okay, how about this motion from Mayor Chow? How about that one? Which is
It hasn't come
recommending,
before the board yet.
oh, it's not before the board.
It's not before the board yet.
Okay.
I know that that was passed at the city
Executive
council.
committee, yeah.
Executive.
Yeah.
I think it was passed at the executive, but it has not come before the board yet.
How about we talk about,
No, I would only
Mrs.
like you
Spending.
to speak
How about
about
Mrs. Spending?
the Auditor General's report.
the general needs to know there is a culture of misspending in TCHC. And that's what we're in trouble with.
No, that's.
No,
she-
you
she was-
don't acknowledge there is misspending in the corporation?
I would like you to speak to the Auditor's
I
General
am.
report.
I am speaking to it in plain terms. I don't sugarcoat the truth. I'm sorry, Mel. You come from a corporation lifestyle. I am from the grassroots. I am a poor tenant. I have disabilities, and that's just how I communicate. Unfortunately, that's the way I
I'm going
am.
to give you some leeway.
And I'm not offending anybody. you know.
This is not before the board, so I don't want you to speak to that. I will give you leeway to speak to whatever was on the November 25th, 2020, and that's it. So you've got 1 minute.
To the November?
Whatever that slide is, that's November 20th, 2025. And that's it. I'm going to, and I'm granting you leeway to even speak to that because I don't think it has anything to do with, okay, this is a different slide now.
So how about boarded up? I boarded up properties of TCHC due to the state of good repair. We are boarding up items, and maybe we will board up items if we don't secure funding in 2027. I commended the mayor, if she gets elected again, to negotiate with the province, but that's not going to happen. We know Doug Ford does not care about social housing investment. So the next option is going to the Mark Carney, the federals, to help us with the state of good repair. Because you in the story, again, I'm going to violate the rules, it calls for $4.5 billion for the next 5 years. Now, that only can happen if there's political will. And I've done this movie before in the year 2014 when Councilor Ana Bailao, former Councilor Ana Bailao, encouraged us tenants. She empowered us, and we went to Ottawa, we went to Queen's Park, so that resulted in 2019 when you got an investment of $1.5 billion for the state of good repair that is coming to an end this year, 2026. So we are in need of the city to help us, and the co-op sector, by the way, already are moving on to see that there is money for their next years ahead, as they are also facing similar financial crushing pressures. And we are in a situation that some RGI units will close. And talking about the past deputant who's talking about the RGIs. I don't want to see those RGIs to disappear, but if we don't have the funding, you understand what are we going to be going, right?
I understand, Miguel, and we certainly appreciate you advocating for funding for TCHC. So thank you very, very much. And
Thank you, Mel. I can hear your sentiment of compassion. Thank you, everybody from the board.
I work very hard for the tenants.
We are
of
working very
TCHC.
hard, yes. Thank you. That's it for me. Have a good
My
day.
name's Adele. So I will turn this over to Tara Anderson for her presentation on item number 6.
Oh, that worked. It was taking a long break, man. Yes, Jesus.
Thank you, Chair. We're just getting the presentation up on the screen.
Do we have technical difficulties for this too?
It's coming, I believe. I believe it's being done through WebEx. Oh, no.
Bring it from there.
Ready? Great. Thanks again, Chair, and good morning, everyone. This presentation summarizes the results of our audit of TCHC's building repair capital planning. I'd like to acknowledge my team for their excellent work on this audit. Ina Chan, Deputy Auditor General, and here today, Elaine Liu, Patricia Lee, Celia Tao, and Vivian Chen. I'd also like to express our sincere appreciation for the cooperation and assistance we received from TCHC management and staff, including Sean Baird, Lily Chen, Noah Slater, Tara Congram-Jin, Alan Liang, Carlos Pereira, Charmaine Koo, Katerina Perez, Daisy Wong, and all the facilities management and operations staff that provided support for the audit. Next slide. Our presentation will cover some brief background, why this audit matters, our audit objectives, key audit findings and recommendations, and finish with my closing remarks. Next slide. The diagram on this slide, also found in our report, provides an overview of TCHC's current capital planning process to address its state of good repair backlog. Our report refers to TCHC's State of Good Repair database, which you may know as Asset Planner, and TCHC uses this database to track its State of Good Repair, or SOGR, backlog and future capital repair and replacement needs, generally identified through building condition assessments, or BCAs. The database forecasts work that will be needed in the future and is the starting point for the capital planning prioritization process. From the database, those SOGR needs that are higher priority and related to assets in poorer condition are included in what we've called a rolling list of potential planned capital projects. At TCHC, this is referred to as the Capital Request File, or CRF. During the annual budget process, additional inputs are considered for the planned capital work. The Capital Planning Unit works with other business units to review the list of potential planned capital projects, confirm outstanding SOGR needs, identify new capital work not previously captured with input from facilities management and operations and site staff, and remove needs that have been addressed. At the end of each year, TCHC's consultant, Amoresco, updates the SOGR database for completed work, carries forward any SOGR backlog items that were not addressed, and applies inflation adjustments. This becomes the starting point for the following year's capital planning process. Next slide. TCHC management has reported results related to its capital work against several key targets. In addition to reporting meeting the accessibility requirement from 2019 to 2024 and a 13.9% reduction in combined energy consumption in 2024, management reported maintaining the minimum subject unit counts, preventing permanent unit closures due to building condition, and advised that about 260 previously closed units have been or will be returned to service through building repair capital investment. Since 2019, TCHC has also reported annually on progress towards its goal of achieving a portfolio-wide average facility condition index, or FCI, of 10% by 2027. TCHC reported that the 2024 portfolio-wide average FCI was 11.8%, improving from 15.6% in 2019. Next slide. Although TCHC has made progress in stabilizing building conditions, more than half of its developments were in poor or critical condition at the end of 2024. These developments house just over half of tenant households, including vulnerable tenants. This audit highlights a significant funding risk. Federal funding, which currently accounts for more than half of TCHC's annual building repair capital funding, is set to end after 2027. Without additional funding, the state of good repair backlog will grow and building conditions will worsen. TCHC's ability to undertake multi-year capital projects and its holistic approach to building repairs will also be at risk. Effective capital planning is important because it helps TCHC identify and prioritize the most urgent repair needs and allocate limited funding and resources accordingly. It also helps to support funding requests to address the needs identified in TCHC's 10-year capital plan. Next slide. TCHC is responsible for the state of good repair of over 1,300 buildings, which includes 83 TCHC-owned buildings operated by the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation. The objective of this audit was to assess whether TCHC's building repair capital program is effectively planned and managed to reduce the state of good repair backlog and achieve intended outcomes. In assessing this objective, the audit aimed to answer the two questions that you can see on the slide. Next slide, please. We recognize that TCHC management is working to strengthen its capital planning process by addressing recommendations from both its external consultant and internal audit. As TCHC works to secure additional funding for its renewed investment plan, it will be important to continue strengthening the capital planning process. And this audit identifies three main areas for continued improvement, as shown on this slide. Next slide. Section A of our report focuses on enhancing board, city council, and public reporting of SOGR needs and funding required in the 10-year capital plan. Next slide. Looking backwards, TCHC's 2018 to 2027 capital plan submission included $3.2 billion for SOGR to bring the portfolio-wide average to the target FCI of 10% by 2027. At the time, TCHC's SOGR database identified $3.3 billion in SOGR backlog and needs, with actions required within the next 10 years from 2018 to 2027. Next slide. From 2018 through 2024, TCHC budgeted and spent over $2.3 billion on its building repair capital program. In many cases, developments where TCHC made higher capital investments had larger repair backlog or needs coming due over the 10-year capital plan period. However, given the age of many buildings, a number of these developments also continue to have building components in poor or severe condition and still require attention. While TCHC tracks and reports cumulative SOGR spending each year, it has not analyzed and reported SOGR backlog and needs that were originally planned to be addressed within the 10-year plan period, but were later postponed or deferred. To clearly demonstrate how TCHC's SOGR backlog will be addressed through the 10-year capital plan and what will not be addressed or is unfunded, TCHC should better track and document needs from its SOGR database through to its rolling list of planned capital projects and 10-year capital plan. Next slide. Looking forwards, TCHC's 2025 to 2034 capital plan identifies $2.3 billion for SOGR, and of this, $1.3 billion was reported as directly contributing towards bringing the portfolio-wide average FCI to 14.4% by the end of 2034. A significant proportion of the accumulated backlog remains unfunded. There is currently not enough funding committed to address the accumulated backlog identified in TCHC's SOGR database for the next 10 years. TCHC's SOGR database identified a total of $4.6 billion in SOGR requirements with actions required within the next 10 years. Although it appears from the SOGR database that there is enough funding committed to address asset elements in severe or poor condition or medium to urgent need, this may not be the case. It is difficult to validate the extent to which TCHC's SOGR needs will be addressed and what will not be addressed or is unfunded. While TCHC uses its database to report the accumulated SOGR backlog for its 10-year capital plan, TCHC's overall SOGR needs are informed by additional inputs, including its rolling list of potential planned capital projects. The lack of systems integration impacts TCHC's ability to fully track and document the flow of information from its SOGR database to its rolling list of potential planned capital projects and the funding envelopes in the 10-year capital plan. There are also other factors we'll cover later in this presentation that impact the accuracy and completeness of the SOGR database. Management advised that they are working to strengthen the basis for SOGR backlog estimates and funding requests, including refining data, assumptions, and supporting information used in the 10-year capital plan. I'll now pass it over to Ina Chan, Deputy Auditor General, to continue the presentation.
Thank you, Auditor General. Next slide, please. Changes to project scope and costs impact what is addressable within TCHC's 10-year capital plan. Cost estimates from building condition assessments are used as the starting point for the plan. But because TCHC buildings are aging, and since BCAs are limited to visual site observations, further investigations can reveal larger scopes of work and more urgent repairs or replacements are needed. And cost estimates tracked in the SOGR database can be significantly different from actual costs. The estimates in TCHC's SOGR database typically aren't updated as more reliable information is obtained through investigation and design work. Management advised that this approach is intended to preserve the database as a point-in-time record of BCA-based needs, with updates generally made through new condition assessments, inflation adjustments, and completed project updates. Because of the lack of systems integration, it is difficult to assess how cost escalations affect what can be addressed within the 10-year capital plan. Next slide. While TCHC's board receives a high-level breakdown of the building repair capital program by envelope, the 10-year capital plan that goes to City Council for approval shows it as a single line item. TCHC can continue to increase the transparency of its capital planning by enhancing reporting on SOGR backlog, needs, and future requirements to better support funding decisions and better clarify its SOGR capital plan allocations, links between funding envelopes, and capital projects. Greater visibility into TCHC's prioritization process would help explain why projects are advanced, delayed, or deferred under funding constraints. This includes being clearer on how factors such as risk, urgency, building condition, and affordability are balanced. Enhanced tracking and reporting can help stakeholders better understand how capital projects evolve or are reprioritized over time, and how these changes affect the funding required to address the backlog. Management advised that improvements are underway as they prepare a new 10-year SOGR plan, and that they are working with the city to provide a more structured breakdown of the SOGR backlog. Next slide. Portfolio-wide FCI is the main way TCHC measures the effectiveness of its SOGR investments. TCHC has regularly reported improvements in its portfolio-wide average FCI and has begun reporting FCI by building type in recent years. However, our audit noted that certain individual developments continue to have relatively high FCI. Additional information by development is provided in Exhibit 6 to the report. There are inherent limitations to using FCI as a performance indicator. TCHC's external consultant identified that on its own, FCI is not a reliable or sufficient SOGR metric, as it doesn't measure forward-looking condition or investment effectiveness. Other measures to consider may include measures of the frequency of critical asset failures ahead of planned capital work, asset condition trends, for example, aging of backlog needs in severe or poor condition or of higher urgency or with a life safety risk, and improvements in the backlog at the building or development level compared to capital investments. TCHC is working to implement additional performance indicators beyond FCI to better assess and report on effectiveness of capital planning investment decisions and how it manages the backlog. Next slide. Section B focuses on improving tracking and reporting of how SOGR backlog and needs are prioritized and addressed. Next slide. TCHC should set out a consistent methodology for using information from the SOGR database to support improved prioritization and tracking processes as part of its capital planning. The current manual process and lack of systems integration that flows some but not all BCA data into the prioritization process makes it difficult to trace how state of good repair needs identified in the database are grouped and incorporated into the rolling list of potential planned capital projects. For example, TCHC staff advised that some SOGR needs are not included and considered because they are expected to be addressed through preventative maintenance or by facilities management specialty areas like life safety or electrical. In addition, certain groups of projects are identified, prioritized, and planned outside the normal capital planning prioritization process, for example, holistic building, energy, and accessibility projects. TCHC's procedures should ensure sufficient documentation and complete data to demonstrate how these projects are identified, prioritized, and considered in allocating capital funding, including how they impact the SOGR backlog and needs. Next slide. Given TCHC's buildings are aging, TCHC management advised there are many high priorities and they regularly review capital projects using professional judgment and staff input when reprioritizing capital needs. However, the reasons for reprioritizing or deferring projects are not always well documented, including why higher priority needs are not always addressed first. TCHC staff advised that system changes and staff turnover limited their ability to explain or provide supporting documentation for prioritization decisions. Stronger documentation would improve transparency of how capital needs are prioritized and deferred. Next slide. A significant proportion of SOGR funding has historically been allocated to responsively address urgent or emergency capital needs as they arise. This is budgeted as demand capital. In our review of completed projects and work order data, we observed examples of similar types of capital work that were inconsistently assigned to planned capital and demand capital budget envelopes. We also noted instances where demand capital directly addressed the backlog and needs in the SOGR database. For example, when an asset fails or deteriorates to the point where repair or replacement is needed before the original timeframes to address the need. Some demand capital spending was used to address future needs beyond the 10-year horizon or to respond to operational stakeholder or tenant priorities. And finally, some expenditures charged to the demand capital budget appear to involve work that may be more operating in nature. Better tracking and analysis of data can help TCHC continue to improve monitoring and management of reactive spending. In addition, enhancing the reporting of demand capital spending would help to improve transparency and understanding how demand capital spending impacts state of good repair or could be better prioritized to the backlog given funding constraints. Next slide. Section C focuses on the need for TCHC to continue improving and maintaining the quality of information in its SOGR database. Reliable and up-to-date information is essential to support capital planning, prioritization, and reporting of the state of repair backlog. Next slide. TCHC fell behind on building condition assessments in part because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but by the end of the 2025 cycle, about 1/4 of developments did not have a recent BCA. Management has advised that TCHC plans to catch up on BCAs across all developments by the end of 2026. Until this catch-up work is complete, some SOGR estimates and FCI calculations may continue to rely on outdated condition information. To improve the accuracy, completeness, and comprehensiveness of data, TCHC should strengthen its quality assurance process over updates to the database. This includes ensuring BCA consultants fully update all required data fields and that any gaps or inconsistencies are identified and resolved. Any further investigations needed to refine SOGR needs and cost estimates and related database updates stemming from these investigations should be tracked. And finally, TCHC should ensure that larger completed projects affecting multiple buildings, components, and needs are accurately and completely and consistently updated in the database. I'll now turn the presentation back over to the Auditor General for closing remarks.
Thank you, Ina. In closing, as TCHC works to provide safe, affordable housing for its tenants, it is critical that SOGR funds are prioritized appropriately so that buildings are safe and in at least fair to good condition and that limited funding is used effectively. Implementing the 10 recommendations in this report will strengthen and further improve TCHC's capital planning process and capital project spending prioritization while helping to ensure funds are used effectively. TCHC management are committed to improving their capital planning frameworks and tools, and management has agreed to all the recommendations. Their response and action plans are included as Appendix 1 in the report. Next slide. Once again, we would like to express our sincere appreciation for the cooperation and assistance we received during our audit from TCHC management and staff, in particular those from the Capital Planning Unit and from Facilities Management. That concludes our presentation. Just a gentle reminder to the Chair and Board Secretary that on adoption, the Board should forward this report to City Council for information through the City's Audit Committee. Back to you, Chair. We're now available for any questions. Thank you.
And we really appreciate the work that you've done for TCHC. And I will ask if there are any questions for the Auditor General on this report. No questions? Pardon?
She answered them all. There are 10 recommendations. It was good to hear management has accepted all 10 recommendations. We look forward, going forward to hearing reports back of how the corporation is fulfilling those recommendations. Thank you, Auditor.
Okay. Sean would like to comment on management's response to the recommendations.
So thanks very much. And through the chair, I just want to thank the Auditor General and Deputy Auditor General for the work and for recognizing the complexity that goes into managing one of the largest portfolios of social housing in Canada. TCHC has not always had adequate funding available to properly maintain our housing to the level of adequacy that we would like. We do right now, and we want to make sure that we're appropriately prioritizing and using our capital wisely to make that last. We accept and agree with all 10 of the recommendations that have been put forward by the Auditor General, and we see this as an important opportunity to strengthen our capital planning program going forward. The audit underscores the scale and challenge that TCHC faces in managing a large aging portfolio that serves many vulnerable residents. Although approximately $2.3 billion was invested in building repair capital from 2018 to 2024, capital needs continue to exceed available funding due to historic underinvestment, aging infrastructure, and rising construction costs. In 2025, we've updated the State of Good Repair backlog number to $4.6 billion, working with the city's asset management team. Management's already begun taking action by developing a formal State of Good Repair plan, improving capital planning procedures, strengthening our building condition assessments, and enhancing reporting and performance measures. Implementation will continue throughout 2027 and 2028 to support stronger governance, transparency, and accountability. Funding remains the defining strategic issue that we face, but better planning is also essential, and sustained investment is required. Without continued federal support after 2027, the backlog will grow and building conditions will deteriorate very quickly. We will continue working with all orders of government to advocate for stable, long-term housing infrastructure funding. In summary, the audit provides clear recommendations which are well aligned with our go-forward roadmap to strengthen planning, data reporting, and accountability. So every capital dollar is directed to the areas of greatest needs. Once again, thanks very much to the Auditor General and their team.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Brian, Nick, and then Vanita. Brian?
Thanks. I guess, how can we use this report and work with the city to raise the need for better support from the provincial government? Because we inherited these buildings in 2001, and they were in not great shape then. And I just really feel we need a strategy to raise the need for funding, not only federally, but with the provincial government to address this issue.
Through the chair, I would suggest we do have a pretty comprehensive advocacy plan that we're working at all levels of government to address the needs for funding. That includes the research work that was recently published on the public housing dividend. It includes regular advocacy efforts with both the federal government, the provincial government, and the city as well. So I would say that work is pretty comprehensive. We will marshal every piece of evidence we can find to try to make that case, and that has been the approach thus far. This audit report supports that, but this audit report also speaks much more specifically to the mechanisms and the approach to which you prioritize and deliver on your capital plan. It speaks far less to it mentions the need for sufficient funding, but that's not the sort of operative set of recommendations that are in the report. So we'll continue to reference every available source we have about the need for funding, including these references.
I guess just one other thing is I think coordinating with the city, but you should also look at how you could utilize the board in supporting your request for funding to all levels of government. Thanks. Thank you.
Through the chair, happy to do that. And in our in-camera session, I've got an advocacy discussion that I want to raise with the board. So happy to get into it more further there.
Okay. Nick?
I'd just like to say thank you to the AG on this report. From my perspective, this is one of the most important things that the organization does and spends hundreds of millions of dollars a year. So having extra scrutiny and so on is really important and useful. Thank you, and especially from the board's perspective. From my perspective, the big takeaway, I think we're on the right track. Like a lot of these items addressed in here, I feel like are works in progress. Noah and the facilities management team has sort of over the last little while really updated and upgraded our whole process. And what comes through here loud and clear in my mind is prioritization, and that is a board and management identified key area to focus on now. And I think it'll make a big difference going forward. So just want to add those comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Benita?
Thank you, through the chair. I also wanted to express my gratitude to the AG and team for this important work. Much of the, I'm also grateful to hear management was in full support of the findings. And I think given my 2 years on this board and seeing how much effort has gone into better understanding our state of good repair and advancing a more fulsome asset management strategy, it's reassuring to see that your feedback really aligns, as Nick said, with the direction we're currently pointing in. I would add, though, to management that I think what would be helpful as we look to pivot and forward to City Council would be an understanding of how the timelines and impacts and how we keep on this accountability train, because truly we shouldn't be as a board strictly relying on our internal audit or external audit support to ensure that the appropriate conversations are being had. And now that we have concrete recommendations that go hand in hand with governance conversation, we should have a time frame in how some of these recommendations will be implemented.
Does anybody want to speak to Benita's comments? No?
Maybe I'll start, and if Noah or Tara wants to jump in and support. So through the chair, I would suggest the right next step for us is to compile and bring together the different sources that we have. So the Auditor General's report is one of the sources that we have. The external consulting report that we had from GEI is another source. Our own internal assessment from a couple of years ago is another source. So there's a variety of pieces out there that I think we need to ensure are properly contributing to one fulsome plan. I don't want to have 4 different plans that are pursuing different improvements under different timelines. So the intention is to create one plan. I think the board actually saw a draft version of that very recently. But now that we have a formalized, finalized report, we can ensure that all of these recommendations properly dovetail into the timelines associated with that plan. And then we can bring back a more fulsome set of timelines for the board to consider that look at how does all of that get implemented over time. I don't know if you want to add anything further.
No, I think that's well put. I do want to just echo everybody's appreciation of the work from the Auditor General's office. They've been with us over a year. It has been collaborative, explorative. They've been incredible partners on this. And I don't think it's an accident that, as everybody's saying here, a lot of the recommendations that are coming forward in these areas are consistent and with what we're seeing in the GEI recommendations. So these plug right into the work streams that are underway, and it reaffirms some of those GEI recommendations as that foundation for the SOGR plan. So in many ways, this is extremely positive as reaffirming that as a strong foundation for the work we're doing. So we're grateful for it, and it's very consistent. So,
are there any other questions or comments? Mary?
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to add firstly a thank you to the Auditor General for this report and the recommendations, and the fact, and to management as well for accepting all of them. I guess just a comment. It seems to me that this is probably one of the most critical issues that the board will be dealing with ongoing because unfortunately so many of our buildings, as has been stated many times, are aging out, so to speak, and the situation is not going to get any better. It's going to get worse, and we have obviously an obligation to our existing tenants who live in those buildings and all of our buildings, and at the same time we're trying to manage providing new housing, more housing for all of those people who are on the wait list. An almost impossible task, I would think, to do both. But as a board, I think looking at these issues are probably the key ones in terms of a board. Sometimes I think we sort of get into the weeds and we forget some of these monumental tasks that are facing us. And Sean, I look forward to the further discussion that you talked about on our later in-camera session about advocacy and how we move forward. But I just think it's just a real reminder to the board of the, as I say, the very, very difficult task that we have in front of us to maintain what we're trying to do, both maintaining and providing new housing. And how we do it in this, I guess, economic framework is going to be very, very difficult. But I think it's that objective and that goal and that issue should always have to be front and center in terms of what we as a board are doing. But I'm sure I haven't said anything that everybody doesn't realize. I've said, okay.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? I would just like to reiterate everyone's thanks for the work that you've done. And the report certainly includes a lot of detail that the board isn't privy to. And so it shines a light on some of the issues. I will say that this is probably one of the most important issues that the board deals with. I will say this is my 7th year on the board. I can say that this has come up at BIFAC repeatedly. And as has been highlighted, there was an internal audit review that outlined a number of these issues at that point. And then we had the GEI report that built on that, and you're commenting on a number of the same issues. So I do feel that there is a sense of urgency that we move forward with this. And so I do appreciate that management has accepted all your recommendations, and I look forward to regular reporting on the progress that is being made, because I do think that there is a sense of urgency, especially as we move into looking for additional financing after 2027. We have to be, very clear what our backlog is, and we have to know what the state of our existing buildings. So I do think that this is urgent. I did have a couple of questions. I just wondered if you, in your review, do you consider value for money? Was that part of your scope?
So through you, Chair, I mean, my mandate is value for money. The objective of our audit was to examine whether the capital repair program was reducing the state of good repair backlog and achieving the intended outcomes. And so the main issues that we noted for continuous improvement are to improve the tracking and reporting of the SOGR backlog and needs, the prioritization process, and the data quality. Those are really the three main areas as management continues to improve and strengthen its capital planning process to pay closer attention to as it makes those improvements.
And they will assist in
achieving
value
in achieving value for money. Yes.
Thank you. And I was wondering, we do have a draft plan that came to the board last month, and I just wondered if you considered that in you make reference to it, but I didn't know if no. So you didn't review, because that had a prioritization process included in that draft plan. I know that there's more work still to be done and a final plan to come, but that wasn't part of your,
No, sorry, we didn't receive that.
Okay, just curious. Okay, are there any other questions for the Auditor General? Oh, yes, Vanita?
Through the chair, just a silly one, but how often will they report back to you on progress related to this report?
So our protocol for follow-up is usually, so we have an online system where management can provide their update in terms of whether a recommendation has been fully implemented or not, and also the percentage completion status too, and upload any supporting documents for fully implemented recommendations. And then usually it's about a year after the report has been published that we, once there's a good amount that have been assessed as fully implemented by management, then we would go in and verify verify the work to, to verify that it has indeed been fully implemented or not, and then we would report that in a report through BIFAC to the board, and then we also do a consolidated follow-up report on an annual basis through the city's audit committee to City Council, and that's usually July of every year that we do that consolidated report.
And as we discussed in the action items, I think the board would like, through BIFAC, would like regular updates as we're moving forward, because I did note that there's timelines that are included in your responses to the recommendations from the Auditor General.
Of course, and we've created a matrix that folds these requirements into some of the GEI tracking and the IA work and
Yes.
categorizes them in a complementary fashion.
Yeah, I think we have to consolidate them, so we're not getting different reports on different, but I think
That's the exact approach we've taken.
yeah, yeah, but they have to be clearly identified this sort. Okay, so I'd like BIFAC to set up some kind of schedule to receive regular updates, and I would like that as it relates to the other Auditor General report from contract managed buildings that was done several years, I think 2021 or something. Yeah. Okay. So if there are no other questions, we have to refer this, we need a motion to refer this to City Council. Is that what you indicated?
Through Audit Committee to City Council for information.
Okay, so is that how the motion is drafted? Sorry, I can't hear that. Okay, so can you
It's recommendation 11 in the cover report.
okay. That'll make it easy for you if it's already written. I just want to make sure that we're moving appropriately. Do you have that on one of your slides?
It's in the cover report in the published materials, recommendation number 11.
So can somebody put, I don't have page 4. So can someone read the motion to us as it's on page 34?
Through the chair, the Board of Directors of Toronto Community Housing Corporation forward this report to City Council for information through the city's audit committee.
Okay.
Here to make it first.
Okay, Vanita, move. Seconder, Debbie, all in favor? Perfect, thank you. And thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate your support to assist TCHC. Improving our processes is very important. So we'll move on to item number 7. Dan, this was your item.
Yes. First of all, Mary, I'm not voting against you.
That's okay, Dan.
I have to say, I was wondering why you were pulling this. I wondered if you wanted to volunteer or something.
Well, I have spoken and questioned about this particular organization because my mandate is home ownership, and I don't see that as our mandate. So I've questioned why we're on it. I question the time that we may invest in this, any cost involved, et cetera, et cetera. And I understand that we have some sort of an agreement that goes to 2029, so that's fine. I just wanted to put it on the record that I would hope that our new chair, whoever she may be, will take that in mind as to whether or not this is worth her time, our time, et cetera, whether we're investing any policy capital in this that might be worthwhile to us. So those are my comments, and I'd be happy to move the appointment.
Okay, thank you. Sean, can you provide some context?
Through the chair, I will just note that this is a legacy program that we have an obligation to maintain at the direction of the city, and that is essentially the extent of the work that goes into it. It's not a program that I would suggest fits with our strategic plan moving forward. It's not something we are looking to invest or expand on in any way. But we have existing clientele within the program that has to be managed.
I think this was a directive. Mary?
I understand.
Yeah, I was just going to say what's just been said by Sean was exactly what I was told, because I asked those same questions about Demila, and essentially I was told exactly what Sean said. It's a legacy program. It's something we have to do at this point, but there's really not much that you will be doing. So I said, okay, if it's necessary, I will step up. But
Are there any other questions? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the appointment of Mary as the chair of Toronto Affordable Housing Fund? Dan, thank you. Seconder? Nick, thank you. All in favor? You've been appointed, Mary. And so
I don't know
hopefully,
whether to say thank you or not, but
who's that with their hand up? Okay.
I just added to the, I just added to the count recommending.
Okay,
I just added to the count recommended, Mary.
okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 8A, the reconciliation and reporting of contracts over $5 million. Vanita, that was you.
Through the chair, do you want to start? Because you also have questions and I've...
No, you go.
Okay. We had the opportunity to discuss this already at BIFAC, but the one item that I didn't have noted was when BIFAC can expect to receive recurring exception reports and whether internal audit or independent legal assessment is being sought after for the replacement control design that led to the findings that are outlined in this report.
Through the chair, that's going to be phase 2 of our work. I would say we are anticipating about by Q4 to bring an update to BIFAC and also the board. But can you please also clarify, like the controls being validated by legal, because this is purely about the contract governance and also reconciliation and spend control report. And as a matter of fact, it's also a process, right? We have established.
Correct. So thank you, through the chair. The controls being literally the control functions of the corporation, whether or not you are seeking independent advice outside of the corporation, if the controls are purely being assessed internally for the proposed remedies that are coming forward. And I think you've already addressed that you are doing so in Q4. I'm not sure if you are actually going to seek independent advice to support that or not.
We will assess and report back. So in terms of working with our system service provider, right? Already we have some of the system controls. It's in collaboration with them in terms of assessing and also establishing sort of system alert function and also incorporate back into the reporting.
Perfect. Thank you, Lily. So what I'm hearing is predominantly the process-related changes are between technology and people and not necessarily a function of needing to redesign any other controls.
That is correct. So, but there is also contract governance as well, right? Contract management that will related to legal and also vendor management. We will do a bit deeper dive and come back with the suggested approach and strategy, report back in future meetings.
Are there any other questions as it relates to 8A? I had a couple of comments, and Noah, you and I have talked about this on a number of occasions. This was an issue that was identified back in 2021 at BIFAC, and a report was requested that monitored multi-year projects or contracts and outlined whether a change order was going to be required so that they were projecting. I came to learn that report that was provided was very limited in its scope and really not adequate and did not cross over into ops. So it did really not do the purpose, serve the purpose that it was intended, but certainly the purpose was identified. I appreciate that the work is being done now, and but it's still concerning to me that there's spending that isn't authorized. I would like to ask, because my concern is more about on a go-forward basis. Like, you know, I appreciate there was a schedule in there and it talked about who had ownership of the contracts and stuff. Things like vendor oversight, and this goes back to the Auditor General's 2021. Do you track if there's multiple repairs, you know, whether replacement is an option rather than just repairing? You know, is who's doing the review of the work that's done by the vendors to make sure that it's adequate, it's needed? I know when we were having the overspending in demand, that one of the issues was the work orders were being approved by people who weren't going into the units and seeing what work needed to be done. So they were making decisions without being on site. So it's things like that, those kind of changes in your processes that I want to make sure that they're happening so that we're not overspending in these areas and that you've got proper tracking.
The tracking, the analysis, the decision.
The root causes really weren't clear to me. I know it identifies, you know, older buildings and stuff, and that's why there's, you know, more repairs. But to me, there's more to the root causes of these overspends.
Sure.
Because the change orders are huge compared to the original estimates.
There's a number of things happening here. And I think the Auditor General's report touches on some of these things.
They're all
right?
interconnected.
Exactly.
All interconnected.
So, you know, let me try to articulate some of those problems and some of the issues and what we're doing what we're doing and what my colleagues in finance are putting forward in this sort of cover report and then the change orders that follow, right? You know, firstly, there's a tracking piece. These contracts, right? And we all understand there's two pieces, right? Like there's the contract allowance, which you're allowed to spend against a procured contract, and then there's the budget piece. And today we're talking about the contract piece. And, you know, some of the challenges, and this report covers it, you know, some of the challenges in just tracking it have to do with system integration pieces, the fact that the contract is used by operations, it's used by facilities management, that it's across a number of vendors and across a number of disciplines of work. So just inherently, it's a very difficult thing to track. And then we have some system integration problems that our colleagues in finance have been spending, you know, this as part of this effort as trying to standardize across so that everybody's, you know, tracking the same way, that we're not missing things that are, you know, that are billed at later dates but performed earlier, that we're getting that holistic picture. And that's a lot of what you're seeing about the issue of the overspend. The first piece is one of tracking. Are we tracking it and seeing it? So that's part of what you're hearing in this piece. The other piece is what you're hearing from the AG piece, and I'm just speaking from the facilities management point of view around the importance of demand maintenance. Demand maintenance is this forecasting signal coming from our portfolio, right? It's a draw from our portfolio, and it's telling us what our portfolio needs on that demand basis, on that reactive basis. And you're right, that's the other half of this that is so important that we're working on as part of that operational delivery as part of the SOGR, is to give our staff the ability to make decisions about reactive repairs based on previous repairs to the same systems, what we're seeing as patterns, what cost are we at relative to replace. So we need to bring, and that's part of the SOGR piece, we need to bring that visibility to our staff on site when they're making those pieces. So between what my colleagues in finance are putting forward in terms of standardization of the tracking piece and what we're bringing forward in terms of the SOGR to be able to pull out large capital, and you heard our colleagues from the Auditor General's office saying there's operational stuff that seeps in there and there's large capital stuff that seeps in there. So we need to get those into the proper stream, really understand what the demand pull is telling us and be able to make decisions that are related to that broader mandate. And that's part of what we're bringing forward at year end in terms of those pieces of the SOGR plan that get operationalized. So there's some thoughts on some of the things that you're saying. I hope that's helpful.
Because we have heard on several occasions about, multi-divisional working groups and stuff like that. At some point, they really need to be effective and really working together and addressing the issues. And there does need to be good vendor oversight. And I think the AG has given you some recommendations in a previous investigation. I also question, and I've questioned this before, we pay money for preventative maintenance, and are we actually getting value for that money? And do we know that the preventative maintenance is really working and reducing our demand repairs? And I do think that work needs to be done. We've talked about that in the past. We've talked about warranties in the past and tracking warranties and what equipment is under warranty. And those are all really important things. And there was a lot of these things that was on that chart about, whose job was whose. That I think there's a few things that are still missing from that work, and making sure that some of these things are not falling through the cracks. And they are issues that, we've talked about and have come to BIFAC and come to the board for a number of years. So I do hope that the work that you've done, that you can take those, whatever you've discovered in analyzing all of these multi-year contracts to build an effective system going forward so that we don't have these issues going forward, and that you can estimate what is going to be required, and you have a good sense of the age of the equipment. And
Couldn't agree with those comments more. And when we talk about how is the SOGR plan moving forward, what are we doing? Why, one of the biggest issues too, when you talk about PM and DM, is that visibility. And that's one of the things my colleagues and I in FM are working so hard to do. When I go on site, and we have a change order around mechanical heating, for instance, right? Coming pages away from this. What I see on site is our internal forces doing really diligent work in the PM piece in buildings. And I've gone to countless buildings with the staff and looked for myself about the work that they're doing. One of the gaps, and this is something the AG's office just spoke about, is the data goes into a box and we're not leveraging it, right? So we're not able to see the power of demand maintenance, and we're not able to see the power of our preventative maintenance. So one of the things when we talk about operationalizing some of these things, we're hearing about the state of good repair. Don't give me the conceptual, what are we actually doing? One of the things is just bringing that data to the fore so that we can have some visibility and make some intelligent decisions about those things.
yeah, and I will say a number of these issues were raised when we were working on homes. And it would have been great if when we were doing homes that whatever adaptations were required to Yardi or the systems, that they were done when we were doing that major transition, because it's not that the issues were not brought to the forefront. So they were matters that needed attending to. So, it's just a sense of urgency that these things need to, be addressed. So I do hope, I'm presuming that this is going to continue to come through BIFAC, but I think some of those other, like that chart that you have that says, who owns the contract, vendor compliance, to me, it's not just vendor compliance. And so I think that chart needs to incorporate a few other issues that do need to be addressed so that we can manage this appropriately. And I hope that, when we had that overspending in demand and there was a lot of work done then, I would like to think, we didn't get a fulsome report at board. We got a lot of completes, but not much context. I do hope that there's lessons learned that are applied, because it's come up on several occasions. So I do hope that this somehow comes together and that we can report through BIFAC. So I do think this is a serious issue. And I do hope you work on the root causes. I appreciate aging is one, but I think it's more than just that. Are there any other?
Could I respond?
Yep.
So just wanted to say through the chair that, we share the concerns that you've raised, and I'm certainly confident that the work that the teams are doing, and I know Noah was answering a lot of the questions, but the reality is that this has been a joint effort by the finance team, procurement, our data team that looks at how we track information, our operations team that often does a lot of the demand work as well as facilities. So all those groups working together certainly acknowledge that it's been different components of this have been raised historically, and different attempts have been made to try to address those challenges independently. I think we have a much more comprehensive approach underway now. The reductions in, as board members will recall, we had a significant increase in demand maintenance spending over a course of 3 years. Those were brought down substantially in 2024, and that this approach is very much responsible for bringing down that significant reduction in demand spending. And we're applying the same sort of lens and the same sort of approach to how we test and manage the controls, because I think the controls are adequate. I think it's more about, did the processes appropriately catch those controls? So that's the work that we're doing now to make sure that those contracts don't continue to exceed. So you've got our commitment that this is something that we are putting in place, and that the whole organization is working together to achieve this.
Because I think those systems and processes are foundational, and they have to be strong. And the issues are only going to get greater as the buildings get older. So I do think that that's critical. So I think we have a motion to receive this report on contracts over $5 million. Nick, you want to move that? Okay, Vanita, seconder, all in favor? So that's been received. The next is the change order for the demand heating services. And Vanita, you pulled this.
Thanks, through the chair. Did anyone else have it other than Nick? Do you want to start?
Sure.
I'm sorry, Nick.
That's fine. I'm always happy to go first, second, or last.
Okay.
Just a quick note, as it relates to the increase, it notes sort of a couple of drivers: inflationary pressure, volatility of material costs, expanding scope due to age. In future, can we either quantify the differences or somehow demonstrate which those are? Because I just find it a bit too vague and generic in that sense. So I'm fine with this report, but just in future, because I do think whether it's inflationary, whether it's scope change, whether it's, again, material pricing, like that to me, like those are different drivers. And as we think about budgets and projects and so on going forward, those are instructive. Thank you.
Building on, through the chair, building on Nick's questions, because I think it ties into where I went a little bit further into the weeds, dare I say, but in looking at how the numbers are presented, what was a bit unclear is how much of the overspend is actually reflected from true emergency tenant health work versus how much should have actually migrated into competitively procured capital projects. I'm just going to run through all three quickly, and then you guys can respond at once. For the work orders that were above 25K, similarly, were they reviewed for aggregation, scope splitting, and capital treatment potentially? And then looking at overall, we've talked about different approaches to our staffing complement, external and internal. Are we considering whether stronger mechanical capacity internally would give us a better value for money or response time in some of these categories of work? They are highly specialized trades, but it's worth considering. Thank you.
The first question, and then I'll allow my colleagues in finance to weigh in. There's approximately $4.2 million in that overage. That's considered 25,000 or plus larger capital work that was delivered to this stream that we identified. That the group identified. In terms of growing our internal forces, we think that is wise. And, you know, further to the chair's point, we need the business case. We need to put that data together to show that, like, our instinct is this is sound, this is savings, certainly an improvement in the quality of work with our internal forces. We want to put that business case together, and we do think there is an argument for growth and expansion. We believe that, and we think that business case will be forthcoming.
Through the chair, to answer both Director Nick's and also Vanita's questions. So for the future budget process, we will break down sort of the cost drivers, trying to look at the past trend and trending analysis and also estimate on the major cost categories and put that into the budget planning. In terms of the actual breakdown between the emergency repair, inflation, and other potential root causes, I'm going to throw that question back to Raj Atma, who is our property accounting director. She has been supporting FM team throughout the analysis reconciliation process. Hopefully she can provide a detailed response to that.
Thank you, Lily, through the chair. So a lot of the heating work, other than the $4.2 million that Noah spoke to, is demand in nature with variety of scope. There is a very high volume of work orders. So that's certainly for us to take it back and see if we can do a more deeper dive. Typically, the pricing is controlled through the contract, so because it's a rate-based pricing. So in most cases, it's either the volume of the work orders or the nature of the work that needs to be done. It is quite a high volume, so we would certainly have to take that back and see if we can provide better analysis in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj and Lily, and Noah, for your initial response. What I was going to say that your point highlighted, Raj, is how much of this stems on Noah's earlier point of early warning indicators is what our demand spend is saying. So it would be worthwhile to understand from your state of good repair, you heat mapping as this is peaking to say, you know, when we make a decision at BIFAC, when we make it as a board, that we're understanding that the full picture is coming to and not just multi-year Band-Aids that don't correlate. Thank you.
I mean, the $4.2 million is a great example of how we have to support staff, right? Like, these are projects that grow on site, they're urgent, they need to take place. We need to make sure there's an authorized sound stream within these instruments that we've talked about that makes sense. So thank you for highlighting that.
I think projecting is, the ability to project appropriately is really important, and you do need data to do that. Are there any other comments or questions? It wasn't clear to me where the budget, like what was FM spends and what was operating spends, and where you're finding this in the budgets and what the implications are to your ops budget or your FM spending. And I may be mixing the A and B together again. Sorry.
Typically based, through the chair, typically based on our capitalization policy. So for the operating expenses, typically that would fall under operations budget. For
No,
CapEx,
I know, but of these issues that are coming forward to us, it wasn't clear to me what was part of the ops budget and what was part of the FM budget and how you're dealing with that within each of the budgets.
So anything
kind of comes together as one number.
Yeah, as one number, but we did provide a split in the report between OPEX and CapEx.
Oh, we did? And
yeah, we did.
I missed it?
Yeah, so basically, anything to do with OPEX that would normally fall under operations budget, and the capital would be falling under the FM. just given the nature of the program and how the services are being delivered.
Okay. And so where are you finding that within your budget? Budgets.
For 2026, that would be embedded into our existing budget. The team have done the reconciliation, but for future years though, especially most of the change orders
Yeah,
were
'cause you-
pertain to,
The
like the
change order is
remaining,
significant
Yeah,
going
remaining-
forward in spending.
exactly, remaining
That's
years of
what
the
I'm
contract term, that would have to be factored into the future budget cycle in terms of both for 27, 28, primarily for both operating and capital.
Okay, so that's an additional pressure that you didn't have.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm just gonna, I'm thinking about it a little bit differently, because I think these are core facilities spans for the most part. I know there's other elements in here, but there's a lot of these that are really core building facilities spends that we have. So I think it's more indicative of both those needs rising and those costs rising on sort of a per project basis. And so that's where, yes, it's an additional pressure, but it's no different than the sort of the general pressure that we're facing with respect to how do we maintain our buildings in the changing environment that we're experiencing. So I don't know that the change order itself is a new pressure. I think it's identifying what's already relevant, which is that the costs have risen and that we still have to try to keep up with the deterioration.
It is quantifying it going forward, and it's much higher than what was originally anticipated. So, yeah, so I do think it is a pressure that has to be dealt with.
Yeah, totally will be subject to future budget funding availability and
Yeah,
also
and
affordability.
It impacts both, right? And the city isn't offering us huge increases. Anyway, I just think that has to be considered.
Are there any other questions on 8B? Can I have a motion to approve the change order for demand heating services? Benita? Can I have a seconder? Gord, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Okay. Joy?
To the list.
Pardon?
No, you asked all in favor, so I just raised my hand.
Joy, I just want to point out that you're not a member of the board. So you don't have a
Yes, I know.
vote here.
Oh, okay.
You
That I didn't know.
came as a
First time.
No, you came as a deputant and you've made your deputations. And so that's your
Yeah.
involvement in the discussion going forward. You can't vote here.
Noted.
Okay. So can I ask you to mute? We'll move on to item 8C, which is the change order for third-party security services. And Dan, Debbie, you pulled this? Dan, I'll let you go first.
First of all, I've already had a chance elsewhere to ask questions about this. I was very satisfied with the questions, answers I received. This is one of those things where I want to see it more out in the public. This has to do with third-party security, the non-staff that use outside companies that we pay, and they're for-profit companies. My questions had to do with our level of satisfaction, given that there's a change order for more money, whether or not this comes up for bidding in the future, et cetera, and whether or not the staff feel we're getting optimal services for that. So if the staff would like to give me the same answers now that in public, I'd appreciate that. While I've got the floor, I just wanted to also say how much I appreciate my colleagues on BIFAC and the chair. I'm not a member of BIFAC, but the eagle eyes that we have on this board are really wonderful to see, because I feel as a member of a nonprofit board, I should have a concern about all the people who are making money off of TCHC, and hopefully that money's well spent and we're not getting ripped off or by anybody or value for money has been a term come up. So I just wanted to express my appreciation for that. And personally, I would prefer in-house spending, spending on our unionized force, et cetera, to do, take care of more things, but I accept what the decisions that we make are on that. So anyway, if staff would like to address those questions again on the third-party security services.
So through the chair, I'll answer more generally. We are under a 3+1+1 contract with this particular vendor, so that allows us to exercise flexibility on year 4 and 5 in terms of whether we go to market. So at this point, we haven't formally suggested that we'll be doing that. So we continue to work with our current vendor, and we'll keep the board apprised of any changes to that as we move forward. The report in front of you contemplates a change order related to additional demands on this contract due to specific drivers, including responding to particular incidents, including the Swansea Mews incident. We had a third-party issue with our alarm systems that required additional third-party security, for example. Oftentimes we use third-party security because they're able to mobilize and send significant staff after hours to support some of the operational needs and to support some of the security needs identified by tenants. And then the third area is just supporting some of our cooling rooms that we've had to implement this summer. So again, these are factors that are typically beyond our control, but certainly necessary. And so we continue to work with our vendor and work with the community safety unit to determine whether there's additional efficiencies that we could find and whether there's opportunities to use staff where we can. So we continue to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, Debbie, and then Mary.
Thanks, Adele, and thanks, Nadia. Unlike Dan, I didn't get a chance to ask you questions in advance, but I was surprised by the cooling centers having to use third-party security guards. Wondering, and especially given that you're also projecting an increase of overspend in 2027, have we looked, and I'm not naive, I know there's in some instances we do need security guards when our own internal staff can't, but I would hate to think that that's true across our whole portfolio. So have we looked at alternative to third-party security guards or internal CSU people as opposed to using community development staff members, and or if they're not available, is this an opportunity for us to train tenants who will be able to staff the cooling rooms moving forward, right? This is now something that we will do every summer. So how do we begin to think through this, that we're not using, we're not seeing this as an enforcement issue as opposed to a community development opportunity for tenants, for example, for employment?
So absolutely, and thank you for the question. And through the chair, we use third-party security as supplemental in nature in particular communities that are high risk. Our biggest issue historically has been not our tenants, but individuals or trespassers coming into our property. And so many of the tenants in those communities have requested us to have additional support so they feel safe to actually use the cooling rooms. And so it's supplemental in nature. We work with our building staff to actually provide support in many of our buildings, and in some of our other communities, we don't even have staff depending on the need, right? So we have sort of a graduated system depending on the nature of the circumstances of each building. We will be doing a review of the program after this year to look at different approaches, including potentially strategically placed cameras as well as additional staff, internal staff, but noted on the community development staff, that isn't something that we necessarily included in the plan, but I think it's a great idea for us to explore.
For 2027 and the anticipated 2.2 million in overspend, can you pull that apart for us so that we know how much is going to cooling rooms, how much is going to your fire review, those kinds of things?
Through the chair, I'll take that one. Right now, we have historical information on how much we've spent on cooling rooms. It is difficult to note. So, for example, if we look at the data from December 19th, 2025 to present day, about 36% of our spending on security is on demand. So it's not something that we would have planned for. It's things that come up, and that's just in this small period of time. We have a new manager of research and analytics, so we're loading the information into a dashboard as we speak, but I can tell you even just for 2026, about 36% of our spending is on demand. So it's difficult to predict, but we're getting closer to it as we look at historical data.
Thanks. And my last comment is I have overall comments about third-party security, but I'll do so in camera.
Are there any other questions on 8C? Mary?
Yes, I had my hand up, but essentially Debbie has said almost exactly what I was going to say with regard to third-party security in our cooling rooms. And I think this is perhaps one of maybe some other sorts of issues, not a cooling room, but something else where we would be using third-party security, where perhaps there are better alternatives, and even using, for example, in terms of tenant engagement, tenants to work within their own building to monitor if monitoring is necessary, but to decide to do the work and to work together. It's also a way, I think, to encourage community engagement and involvement. But again, as Debbie said, I'm not naive either. I know that there are some places where it may be felt, particularly where there are non-tenants coming into the mix, where it's important that perhaps this is a higher level need. And I'm sure it is hard to predict, but I think we have to take a hard look at that. And particularly from the point of view, I think, of tenant engagement, and also looking at the new way, in fact, we're looking at safety and the job that the CSU has been doing. And we're now looking at more tenant engagement as opposed to enforcement. And so I think we have to take all of those factors into account. But it was more a comment than a question, really. And thank you, Debbie, for saying everything I was thinking.
So I just thank you for the comment, and through the chair, we will be bringing a report back to Tenant Services Committee, looking at how we were able to implement cooling rooms, best practices, and some of the learnings. So that will be coming back before the end of the year. And so we look forward to a robust discussion at that point as well.
Okay. So Mary, Debbie, you'll hear about this soon. Are there any other questions as it relates to 8C? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the change order? Debbie, thank you. Can I have a seconder? Marcel, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. It's been approved. And we will move on to 8G. And we have a deputation on this. Harini?
Good morning, Chair and members of the board. Thank you for allowing me to speak on item 8G regarding the procurement policy revisions. It is an honor to appear before you today. I would like to first acknowledge the Toronto community housing efforts on reviewing and improving the procurement policy. An effective procurement system plays an important role in ensuring public resources are managed responsibly while supporting the delivery of safe and reliable services for tenants. As the revised and procurement policies implemented, I encourage Toronto community housing to continue considering opportunities to purchase goods and services that improve the safety, reliability, and long-term sustainability of its housing communities. I also encourage TCHC to continue considering environmentally sustainable goods and technologies where it is practical and is cost-effective to do so. Sustainable procurement can contribute to long-term operational efficiency while supporting responsible environmental practices. As new technologies continue to develop, considering options that won't harm the environment during the procurement can help ensure that investments remain effective for the future. Technology is another important consideration. As more organizational processes depend on digital systems, I encourage TCHC to continue investing in securitization of technologies that can strengthen the cybersecurity and protect confidential information. When procuring technology and digital services, prioritizing security, reliable data protection, and secure information management can help protect sensitive procurement data. Emergency procurement is also an important component of the policy. Maintaining clear emergency procurement procedures can help with meeting the critical needs while continuing to promote accountability and responsible decision-making. Finally, I encourage Toronto Community Housing to continue balancing transparency, value for money, innovation, sustainability, and security when making procurement decisions. By considering principles together, TCHC can continue strengthening its procurement practices while supporting efficient and resilient housing communities. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the deputant? Are there any questions? Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Are there any questions on 8G? I had a quick comment. It says in the recommendation that the threshold is 633,000, but in the body of the report, it talks about 653,200. Is that a boo-boo, or did I misread that, or?
No, you did not. Thanks, Chair, for capturing that. I was going to make a correction in the public.
Okay.
Yeah, the threshold according to the treaty should have been 653,200.
Okay.
It was a typo.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So can I ask that you change the recommendation accordingly? The 653,200, which is in the body of the report. So
the initial service offices.
Who's that? Can I have a motion to approve the recommendation as amended? Benita, thank you. Debbie, thank you. All in favor? Okay, motion's been approved. We will move on to item 9A, which is the Tenant Services Offices Service Model Realignment. And we have 3 deputants on this. Talia Wilson is the first.
The TCHC Board of Directors. My name is Thalia Wilson. I'm a Tenant Service Coordinator with Toronto Community Housing Corporation. I'm here to speak to the proposed reorganization of the hub model. I joined in TCHC in 2021, and as a hire from the peak of the pandemic, I've seen the impacts of the current model on the tenants I serve and the colleagues I work alongside with. First, I want to say that I take great pride in my work as a TSC. I've seen firsthand how those of us in the public service keep people in need of housing in Toronto with a roof over their heads and part of a community. This is why many colleagues in my division and in my union are happy to hear about this proposed change in the hub model. These hub models have historically changed so many times, out of the control of tenants and staff. Not only that, but each reorganization has involved consultations with both tenants and staff that seem not to make it into the formal recommendations that come before the committee. My colleagues and I are on the front lines of this work, and we're hoping that this time will be different. We're hoping that the recommendations, specifically around safety for tenants and staff and adequate staffing, will be respected. Safety for staff means we have safety for clients. Currently, most hub locations not only have tiny amount of space, but the space, and that space is in dark basements, offices that flood, areas where there is no secure place to store files, or spaces where we can speak to tenants in a secure manner. You're saying in your proposal that space will have a staffing standard of at least 1 clerk and 4 TSCs. You also say that a smaller number of hubs mean they will have secure reception, meeting rooms, secure record storage, security systems, and adequate amenities. I've worked in hubs where the files were kept in boxes on the floor that were covered with garbage bags when they were flooded. In the hubs where thin plexiglass is all that separates a tenant in crisis and a staff working almost alone. I've worked in hubs where a fire would have wiped out the documents. That mean a single person could possibly be on the street. This is not acceptable, and this is not the type of service that I want to be providing or the conditions for my colleagues and I to do our jobs well. One of the first clients I've ever had in this role was a young mother in arrears, but something wasn't making sense. Her filing system was unsecure and clear that I needed to get the client to resend every single document. When I was able to finally meet with her, we discovered that we needed to credit her almost $3,000. When I told this tenant the news, she collapsed on the floor, sobbing. She said for the first time in 2 years, she's able to buy food, feed her children again. She's been paying the rent above what she could, and for the first time could buy Burger King for her kids. When we have hubs that work, tenants' lives can be changed. When we have fully staffed and safe hubs where files are securely stored, workers like myself can catch the issues that can mean the difference between being housed or underhoused. We have a crisis of health and safety for staff that will also be addressed by this transition to fewer hubs that are much higher quality. The work we do here is critical to the functioning of this city. Without it, so many people, like the single mother in my story, fall through the cracks and don't get back up. All my colleagues and I want to do is to do our job safely and with attention to care and detail. Your leadership to make this possible is what I'm hoping for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions specifically for the deputant? Nick?
Is there anything specific in the report that we should be considering that's not in there or is in there that should be changed?
I don't think there's anything specific in the report that should not be changed, but the area of focus is, like we're saying, it's safety, it's health and safety, it's proper storage of files and documents, and I think for now that's pretty much the majority of it, or the major point of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I also heard you saying that you think it's important for you to have safe workspaces.
Yes.
As staff as well, including private space, so you're able to meet with clients.
Yes.
And so my question to management is that something that you're being prioritizing, actually, is the question I have.
So through the chair, we'll walk you through a short presentation after the deputations, and we'll be able to speak to that for sure.
Perfect. You have a question for the deputant, Vanita?
Yes. Through the chair, I just want to confirm the understanding from the first question. So the only recommendations from your deputation as it relates to the report we have is the focus on staff safety and tenant safety, as well as proper documentation, storage, and proper working conditions with whatever model goes forward.
Yes, but I would also, yes, so sorry, I think I'm trying to understand what you're saying. The staff safety, the proper filing system of the documents that does not include temporary storage. By that I mean, in case there's something happened in the office and then we have to move those files, putting it back in permanent spaces where it's going to be secured is where we're coming from. The safety for the tenants as well as the staff is very important.
Thank you.
Does that help? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I will ask Bertha DeCuna to come forward.
Good morning, board members. My name is Bertha Ticuna, and I've been a TCHC worker for 30 years. I've lived through 3 organizational reorgs and served many roles over this time. I'm here speaking to you today on the proposed hub changes you will be deciding on and raising concerns, hopes, and asks that hundreds of my colleagues have brought forward. Many things have changed in the 3 decades I've worked here, from our use of typewriters to the 3 reorganizations I have lived through. But one thing has been constant, and that is the quality of care, support, and trust frontline workers have with tenants. It's the importance of this trust I want to highlight today. Each major reorganization of TCHC has come through this board with what I believe to be good intentions. I say this because each plan presented to you and the one presented last Friday, July 17th, look great on paper. These presentations address so many of the major issues staff are constantly highlighting: chronic understaffing, chronic underfunding, endemic health and safety issues impacting tenants and staff, and severe lack of secure sites. The issue I'm highlighting today is that no matter what seems to be presented in these overhauls, it is a final execution that never seems to happen properly or fully. You highlight that many consultations have been carried out with both staff and tenants. The anonymized survey that was conducted to allow staff feedback was open past the date that the recommendations for the final report was submitted. When feedback from your frontline staff, whose relationships and commitment to tenants are the backbone of this organization, are disregarded, our trust in the execution of yet another reorganization is broken again. My union siblings have been clear. A plan is just a dream unless you can actually operationalize it. We are glad to see this report's inclusions and remind you all that safe work sites, fully staffed locations, secure file storage, healthy workplaces, increased funding for tenants and service provision is not just a KPI for you. It is a difference between a life on the streets and a family in a home for those we serve. I was a tenant services coordinator on site after the big fire at 200 Wellesley in 2010. The experience left a huge impact on me. I was working with a young woman who had lost her husband, her home, her stability, and her sense of safety. When our hubs got moved around yet again, she had to spend money she didn't have, slowly trekking out to find me, one of the only staff who could speak her language and knew her file. These massive, costly reorganizations are only worth it if you have enough funding to fully support them. We are here today calling for accountability and action that supports staff and tenants. Our tenants are not just files to move along. As managers often tell us, they are human beings who deserve dignity and care. Functional, safe, spacious, and secure hubs are not an option. They are a lifeline of communication between staff and the public we support. I hope that these recommendations lead not only to the changes you are proposing in full, but translate to the only real resources that will allow them to become permanent: better staffing in TCHC, more resources for the buildings in dire need of repair and resources, and safe working conditions that allow us all to provide the crucial public service we are tasked with upholding. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions specifically for the deputant before we move on? Okay, hearing none, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And the last deputant on this item is Catherine Wilkinson.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, staff, tenants at City Hall and watching online. I do appreciate hearing from the 2 previous deputants. And I want to just start off by saying I think the employees who have the most difficult job at Toronto Community Housing are actually our tenant service coordinators. They are the frontline staff who provide tenant-facing services, and we owe them a debt of gratitude for the jobs that they do. So I just want to touch on what they also said was about the changes in the service model. Initially, the service model was called operating units, or OOs, and there were 27 OOs across the portfolio. A few years later, to reduce operating costs, Toronto Community Housing streamlined the tenant service office model by creating community housing units, or CHOOs. So there were 13 CHOOs across the portfolio. For staff and tenants, as you've heard, this is not their first rodeo. This is the fourth time Toronto Community Housing has changed the service model. Management suggesting that there is change fatigue is a bit of an understatement. It's more like change paralysis. In 2019, as some of you may recall, the board approved a $44.5 million investment to physically restructure the tenant service hubs and create 88 hub locations, 78 of which were built, which suggests perhaps there was a decrease in both capital and operating costs. The board has been now made aware that tenants are not receiving tenant-facing services at the hubs due to staffing constraints. The tenants go to a service hub that is closed, no notice is given, or perhaps there's a notice on the door that says closed until further notice. Treating our tenants this way is unconscionable. As a result of this tenant service hub model, Toronto Community Housing created hundreds of employee positions that now work remotely, such as community service coordinators for vulnerable tenants and for tenant engagement, supervisors across the portfolio, as well as district managers. Multiple workstations were physically built at each of the hubs for staff who work remotely that sit empty. Perhaps staff who work remotely could alternate days in the workstations that were built for them to ensure offices can remain open. The new model aims to downsize, again, the more we change, the more we don't, by converting 78 hubs into 26 service offices. There will be 5 staff, which is 4 tenant service coordinators and a front desk clerk. As we know, tenant service coordinators are responsible for a specific number of buildings and tenant files. So multiply that by 4 tenant service coordinators. This could result in hundreds, perhaps even thousands of tenants being served at one new office location. That's a lot to ask for an office that was built to serve a couple of hundred tenants. Tenants visit the office with maintenance requests and to speak to their superintendents. There's no mention of a superintendent in this report. So if we are closing 52 of the hubs in buildings, how will those tenants receive tenant-facing services from their superintendents if there's no longer an office? At the heart of the existing service model was putting tenants first. The intent of it was to bring the services to the tenants where they live. Today, the hubs may be in your building or in a neighboring building, or perhaps within a reasonable walking distance. Staff advised it will only take tenants an additional 5 minutes to drive or to take public transit to get to the new offices. I just want you to take that in for a minute when we think about who we're serving. For many tenants, this means it will impose a financial burden on them, as they will now have to pay round-trip transit costs to receive tenant-facing services, like submitting their annual review paperwork. That's a requirement. So it's going to be a pretty tough sell for Toronto Community Housing to convince 43,000 tenants that while this operational decision may inconvenience them by making them travel further to receive tenant-facing services, it will be worthwhile because they'll get faster service. So due to limited staff resources, we've known for a couple of years that the service model is not working. So there's no interim plan indicated today on how we will reduce this disruption in providing tenant-facing services during the pilot program. This is unacceptable. Serving tenants is not optional, it's actually job one.
Okay, Catherine, you're over your 5 minutes, so I would ask that you wrap this up.
Yes, my apologies. I didn't anticipate the opening comments, and I wanted to acknowledge our staff. Madam Chair, 1 second. Closing offices is not a plan. Sending tenants to the call center for tenant-facing services over the phone is not acceptable. Perhaps the board might ask, what's the plan to ensure Toronto Community Housing will provide tenant-facing services from this day forward? I have no doubt that the board is going to approve the report before them. And all I'm asking is that when you do, please keep in mind how this decision will affect 43,000 tenants, many of whom are seniors and people with disabilities. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions specifically for the deputant? Okay, I understand we're getting a presentation on this item.
Point of order, Chair. If we have a problem for disabled people getting inside the doors are closed from the outside. What if someone from the city director can open the doors? They're not in closed door created right now. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I think it's the room automatically locks them. But we have to, but people were able to come in those doors, so I imagine, aren't these ones open? I know this one. So.
Everything is locked. I don't know. We are not in closed camera.
Yeah, I think these two doors open, fine. I don't think there's anyone waiting outside, so I think we're fine. Thank you very much. Sorry, we'll move to the presentation.
So thank you, Chair, and thank you to our deputants. I think many of the themes raised in the deputations are reinforced in the presentation and in the report. I think there's an acknowledgement that status quo is not good enough, both for our frontline staff as well as for our tenants. And so we're here today to kind of walk through our proposed model, and hopefully we'll get the support of the board for us to continue. I'll throw it over to Abdul Almi, who is our Director of Service Delivery, who's going to walk us through a brief presentation, and then we're happy to take any questions from the board.
Thank you, Nadia, and good morning to the chair and members of the board. As Nadia mentioned, I'm going to be walking you through a presentation of the proposed realignment of TCHC's in-person tenant service model. The hub model was created to bring services closer to tenants, but it's become too broadly distributed and difficult to operate consistently, as you've heard in the deputations. Tenants want predictable service and consistent staffing. Staff need the right resources and infrastructure to deliver the services effectively. The purpose of the tenant service office model is a structural reset informed by tenant feedback, staff input, and the 2025 internal audit recommendations. The goal is simple: a more reliable, sustainable, and consistent tenant service experience. I'll start by walking you through the purpose of today's report and the decision we're seeking from the board. We're proposing a shift from an overextended hub network to a smaller number of fully resourced tenant service offices. This is not about reducing service. It's about making service more reliable, consistent, and sustainable. We're seeking endorsement of the tenant service office model and approval of $293,000 in one-time funding for a 6-site pilot. The pilot will allow us to test the model, measure results, and assess risk before considering broader implementation. The need for change becomes clear when you look at what tenants, staff, and the audit told us. Through consultations, tenants consistently asked for predictable hours, consistent staffing, and clarity about available services. Staff told us resources are spread too thinly across too many locations, making consistent service difficult to sustain. Internal divisions confirmed that many locations lack the infrastructure needed to function as reliable service sites. The internal audit identified many of the same concerns, including gaps in the staffing standards, readiness requirements, and operational controls. These are structural issues that require a structural solution. In response, we developed a more focused and sustainable tenant service office model. The model is designed to provide consistent access to core tenancy services from dedicated tenant-facing locations. Each office will operate with a minimum of 5 staff, a complement that will generally consist of a clerk and 4 tenant services coordinators. The pilot will focus on 6 sites that already meet or nearly meet the required infrastructure standard. A one-time investment of $293,000 will allow us to launch and evaluate the pilot. Results will be measured across 8 key performance categories and used to inform future recommendations. The pilot will also help inform the long-term direction for the network of offices. We assessed 3 potential options for scaling the network following the pilot. Based on our assessment, option 2, which consists of 26 service offices, provides the strongest balance of service access, operational stability, staffing feasibility, risk, and cost. It would allow us to concentrate resources in viable locations while maintaining consistent service levels across the portfolio. The estimated capital investment after the pilot is approximately $6.29 million, phased over a 2-year period and subject to future board approvals. Pilot results will validate this approach before any final implementation recommendation is brought forward before you. With that future direction in mind, I'll conclude by providing a recap of the approvals being requested today and the next steps. Again, we're seeking your endorsement of the model and approval of the $293,000 for the 6 pilot sites. The pilot charter will be completed by the end of 2026, with the pilot launch targeted for the end of Q1 2027. Results will be collected in Q2 2027 and reported back to the board with a feasibility assessment, recommended scaling option, and funding request. Risk management is built into the approach through a phased rollout, readiness-based activation, and a pilot-first implementation strategy. We've also developed plans for surplus sites and change management to ensure hub spaces are repurposed effectively and staff and tenants are supported through the transition. In closing, Chair and members of the board, this proposal gives TCHC a disciplined, low-risk path to improve the way we deliver in-person tenant services. The pilot will allow us to test the model, validate our assumptions, and return with evidence-based recommendations for the future of the office network. We respectfully request the board's endorsement of the model and approval of the pilot funding. And with that, I'm happy to take your questions.
Are there any questions? Benita? Mary, next.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for the presentation. This last slide and the second last slide, if you wouldn't mind going back to that, were pretty much where my questions were. I just wanted to confirm the only decision you're seeking from the board is the approval of the pilot itself, and that you will be, ops will be coming back with the results of the feasibility study from the pilot, and a recommendation for the implementation plan based on one of these 3 options, or maybe even like option 4, who knows?
So through the chair, we're seeking endorsement of the model so that we can go ahead and start to make plans. We are working with our facilities management team to look at supplemental capital funding supports for phase 2 and 3 in upcoming budgeting processes. And so the idea is that we would be able to refine any of the learnings. I think it'd be really difficult for us to come back and then go to option 1 unless there were significant concerns. So the hope today is that we can proceed, but we plan to only proceed with phase 1, the pilot phase.
Understood. So the option 1, 2, and 3 is what operations is defining as the model. So the model of taking, for example, option 2 is proposed and only going forward on a pilot of 6 sites related to that model. Perfect. Could perhaps through the chair, could you possibly speak to how you've defined the risk level here? Because it's a little bit disconnected in the body of the report. There are mitigation tactics that are identified. I'm just trying to understand, based on what information did you arrive at high, moderate, and low for each of these model options?
Certainly, and through the chair, I'll have Abdul speak to the details of the risk.
No problem.
Great.
Not a problem. So through the chair, these risk ratings are largely related to our ability to confidently say whether or not these offices are going to remain open or there's a higher probability of closure. So the risk is, what is the risk of office closures? The risk is higher in option 1 moderate in option 2, and low in option 3. And the reason why we have that kind of variation is if you look at the second line around compliant offices and non-compliant offices, specifically the non-compliant, meaning those are offices where we don't have the staffing complement that we're proposing, which is the 5 staff. And then, because we've got a larger number of offices with lower than the proposed complement, increases the probability of office closures in comparison to option 2, which is a lower number of offices, which allow us the kind of the flexibility needed to be responsive. And then the final one, all the offices are compliant, but you'll note that there's a $3 million kind of gap between those two options, which is why this is kind of the most balanced and recommended approach when we come back with the findings from the pilot.
And that's perfect. So that was essentially what I was looking to confirm is what is the risk level and relevance to you on the chart? And you're saying compliant versus non-compliant. But option 2 versus 3, is there an understanding why that delta is so significant in cost relative to the reduction in risk?
Absolutely. So the 3 non-compliant offices in option 2 consist of offices that haven't had historical hub capital spend. One of them is actually kind of a newer space that requires quite a bit of investment in order for us to be able to operationalize it and modify it to such a degree that it can accommodate the number of staff that are required to work in the space, and ultimately all of the requisite kind of storage that you heard from the deputants, as well as kind of meeting spaces for tenants. So they require a little bit more investment than the rest of the network.
Got it. So it would seem that there's a little bit of gray space between where option 2 and 3 may land in future capital repair, but that's why the balanced option is proposed as it is. Thank you. As it related to, I'm just going to direct this to management, as it related to the deputations we heard today from both staff and tenants, how is I know this is a shorter presentation to what was given at TSC, but how has the change management really been thought through here in terms of how even at a pilot stage, we intend to meet our commitments to both our staff as well as our tenants?
So through the chair, after today, assuming we get the endorsement, our goal is to actually start to socialize the work. Part of the reason why we haven't gone out extensively and done outreach is because we wanted to clarify what our way forward was through the support of the board. And I think once we get that, we're happy to start that process. I think there was a comment about an implementation plan and strategy. All of that's in the works. We have an interdivisional working group, including a steering committee of senior leadership that's overseeing this work, and we plan to do it very differently than the previous iteration of this. And so I think we've learned quite a bit from the challenges and the difficulties we've had with the hubs, and our commitment is to do it differently. So we've started this process differently. The last time we didn't start with consultation. So I think we're committed to really getting the information out, particularly in those 6 locations, and then working with tenants throughout the process. We've gone to TAC, I think 3 times in total, and we've committed to coming back to them at least a couple more times to get feedback. So that's going to be the process after today.
Thank you. And I guess in crystallizing the feedback we heard from the deputants today, when we consider, travel distance, accessibility, and digital exclusion, the fact that predominantly we have a seniors population that we do support through these centers, that we're bridging this with the other interdepartmental factors that come into how we may have a transition plan. And I think as this gets approved and your pathway is crystallized, we'll look forward to hearing back.
Absolutely, and through the chair, I would argue that a closed office is not effective, so having less open offices actually starts to address some of the gaps that we've already seen. We continue to work with our frontline staff and our union partners to determine what level of on-site support we can continue to offer for staff that operate in particular buildings, and so we're still very open and committed to providing maximum service delivery to our tenants. There was a comment made in the deputation that a significant number of staff, including our community service coordinators, are working remotely. That's not accurate. Many of our staff have multiple buildings in their portfolio, and so we're not able to actually have them consistently operate a physical location because they have to go door to door and they have to do events and partnership meetings. And so the expectation is that we're able to provide a service delivery model that actually provides open door service. So that's what we think we'll get to.
Okay. Mary and then Nick.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to make comments that I made when it came to the Tenant Services Committee. Certainly, I appreciate all the work that's being done, and clearly, from what I understand from management, is that the current model is not worked, to say the least, and that and it's unfortunate because I gather I know there's been a history to trying to find a model that will work, and to date it hasn't been very productive. So hopefully this will give us a better model. I have a couple of comments, and they're very specific, but I do find them concerning. The first is the hours, and I know somewhere in the report it talks about standard business hours, and that concerns me because we're talking here about a service for tenants, and I'm sure a lot of our tenants work. And there's nothing more frustrating than having a customer care center, which is essentially what this is, that operates 9 to 5. What about those people who can't get there between 9 and 5? And my plea is that we have flexibility there, and I know it has implications for staffing it, whatever, but maybe there are some workarounds. Maybe a couple of days a week the hubs don't open until, or the tenant service centers don't open until noon, and they stay open until, and again, I'm just throwing up numbers here, 7 or 8 in the evening. But at least, and maybe we have it open on a Saturday for a few hours, because otherwise you're cutting off the availability of a lot of our tenants to actually utilize this in the way that they should be able to. And my understanding is that a good reason for having these centers is that is the one-to-one interface between the staff and the tenants. And so let's make it a center where it really does accommodate all tenants and makes it easier for those who work to come in on hours that meet their demands. And after all, this is supposed to be for tenants, and I think we have to look at what will be their demands. The other issue I raised was tenant services, was what's happening with the tenant portal, and will this in fact make it easier to serve tenants without the tenant centers that we're talking about? And will that down the road, I know it's not going to satisfy a lot of what we're talking about, and I'm not suggesting it as a replacement, but I just keep hearing that there is work being done on this, and perhaps with a better and expanded portal, will that assist in terms of tenant service, and it might have an impact on what we do with the tenant service centers. And lastly, I guess, was the whole accessibility issue. And I know that I was told again at Tenant Services that certainly accessibility to the, in terms of the physical centers is a big consideration, and our path has been consulted. But my concern, and it was raised earlier, is just in terms of distances and how people actually get there without spending more money. And I know that has been an issue when coming up with these particular offices in terms of how far they are from the tenants that they're there to serve. But again, just another plea, I guess, is that take a look at that and what it means for the accessibility issues, all right, in terms of people being able to certainly walk, even get on TTC, all of those sorts of transit and transportation issues towards these centers. And that's essentially what I wanted to point out. Okay.
So thank you for the comments, and through the chair, I'll comment on a couple of items, and then I'll throw it to John Ankow and Craig from IT to speak to the tenant portal. With respect to the hours of service delivery, we continue to work with our frontline staff and our union partners, as well as our management teams, to explore optional service delivery hours. And so that's hopefully something we can bring back when we speak about the pilot findings, because we also agree, and we heard from tenants that that's of interest to them. So that is something that we'd like to explore, and we continue to explore that in conversations with our teams. With respect to the accessibility of the physical offices, we recognize that it may be a bit more of a distance for some individuals, and that's why we continue to look at having on-site services, potentially lobby intercepts, and door-to-door service where required for tenants who may not be able to access the office. So we're working through those as well, just to make sure that we're not actually creating a barrier for tenants who legitimately have historically accessed the hub. And so that's something that we're focused on as part of the pilot. With respect to the tenant portal, I'll turn it over to John and Craig to speak to some of the work that's underway as we speak.
Certainly. So through you, Chair, both of the initiatives, both the tenant portal and the tenant services offices are complementary to each other and are part of our overall part of our service delivery strategy. The tenant services offices, as you can imagine, provides an in-person access for in-person services and support throughout the portfolio, whereas the establishment of the tenant portal does provide a digital access for receiving information and also enables the tenants to submit service requests as they choose. Ultimately, both are part of our overall strategy, which provides tenants more choice and improves accessibility of how they choose to receive services from TCHC. Now, in terms of the tenant portal, work is underway. We have an internal working group comprising of executive leadership and several divisions working together to scope the initiative out. The initial deliverable of this project will be to put together a pilot program that we're targeting for implementation by the end of the year. And we're looking to provide a report back from that pilot program as we progress through the project in the coming months and on to 2027.
Excuse me, Nick, and then Brian, and then Dan.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick things. Overall, I endorse this direction. As somebody who is part of the decision to go to the hub model, I still believe strategically is the right thing to do. It's just it could not be operationalized in a effective manner, and this to me is the right ultimate balance, which hopefully some lessons learned. The quality of the service that we deliver is critical, and I think this combination of these offices plus the online portal plus call center really gives wide coverage to tenants, and we're not going to be able to deliver sort of in person at every building all the time, so we have to balance that with the financial constraints we're dealing with as well. Secondly, I know you're going to come back, but for what it's worth, I'm definitely biased towards the full model. From my perspective, the dollars are relatively different, but in absolute terms, we're only talking about a couple $1 million, and each office is covering thousands of tenants. To me, that incremental spend to get full coverage has huge bang for the buck, even though on paper it looks like 30 or 40% more spending. And then lastly, when we do follow up, I'd like to see more details on the operational model as it relates to like the staffing, the matrix of the types of staffing there and the hours, just to confirm from an operational perspective, we're understanding what's being delivered, because I think that was one of the gaps last time from our side, from an oversight perspective. Thank you.
Do you have any comments about that, Nadia?
So through the chair, absolutely echo a focus on customer service. I think that's critical to us and to the tenants and the frontline staff. With respect to the operational model, we completely agree. We focused on the clerical staff as well as our tenant services coordinators to provide services in these tenant service offices. There was a comment made earlier by the deputant that supers will now be more difficult to find. Our 416 building staff are not contemplated in this model. They will continue to provide services at a building level, and so tenants will continue to have access to all of the cleaners, our custodial maintenance individuals, as well as our building supers. They'll continue to be on site, but absolutely happy to elaborate on the operational model as we bring further reports to the committee and board.
Can I just confirm, in option number 2 and 3, it's the same number of TSOs. It's just that 3 of them in option number 2 are less outfitted.
So through the chair, in option number 3, we would have to essentially create these additional tenant service offices, particularly in contract managed sites where they didn't have the infrastructure. So we would be starting from scratch. In theory, we could provide better service delivery, better locations, because they're slightly different locations. It doesn't change our pilot.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a good thing, because we could still.
This is for when that comes back.
Yeah.
And like, understanding sort of there's the dollar difference, and then there was a sort of a loose coverage difference. And that from my perspective, like, in that detail, there's some nuance, obviously. In general, I'm biased towards if we can get more fulsome coverage and, you know, the full service stack and all the appropriate people and all the record keeping, that's worth some incremental investment. But we'll see more detail when it comes back. I'm just saying that's the way I lean as it relates to sort of endorsing a direction, which, again, there's gonna be some options. You're gonna come back with more detail. We're gonna learn from the pilot, et cetera. That's just the way my approach is, just for what it's worth.
Brian, and then Dan.
Yes, thanks, Adele. Mine goes along the similar questions, but I'd like to know in each of these models, how many units are within walking distance of the proposed offices, so we could have a better understanding of accessibility for tenants. So that's one I think I would like to have a better understanding of that accessibility issue, and I don't know what one would set as a reasonable. You probably need to get tenant input on that, but you know, whether it's 500 meters or whatever in terms of the location to the but some determination, so we could have a better understanding of what accessibility issues are being imposed by these changes. Also, I wanted to know whether one of the models looks at having offices that actually having staff move rather than tenants move to those. So are there, you know, I mean, a lot of places you can standardize, you know, places are open every, you know, Mondays and Thursdays or whatever. And as long as that's communicated and it's maintained with appropriate staffing, you're making accessibility easier for tenants rather than you know, making it more challenging. And my final question is, I know you're working on the model that we had discussed a little bit, the model, I'll call it the Ottawa model, and whether the impact of any changes you're going to be doing in relationship to adopting some variation perhaps of that model, what its impact would have on the model, because if that's improving efficiency, it may provide other types of opportunities in designing the model.
So through the chair, thank you for the comments. We don't have the walking distance data on us. I will say obviously more locations would provide easier walking distance, but it creates additional challenges, including concerns around ability to staff it, as well as consistent staffing hours. Our current interim model does provide specific staff hours and hub hours, depending on the location. The challenge with that is it lacks consistency, and it creates confusion for our tenant population. And so we're deeply committed to having a really clear operating model that's consistent across the regions so that tenants could access services equitably and equally across the three regions, which is why we're pursuing less locations but consistent service. But certainly noted around the accessibility and whether it creates hardship for our tenants. I think that's something that we're constantly considering, and we will have to speak to it when we bring back some of the initial findings for sure.
And what with regards to the possible change in the model to reduce the workload, which provides more flexibility for staffing models?
So are you speaking about the Ottawa model, Director Smith, just to clarify? So my understanding is it is more resource intensive and requires funding that we currently do not have. So we can certainly bring some updates on that, but we are trying to balance a variety of factors, including tenant interest, budget, as well as staff concerns. And so that's why you see the model in front of you. I think if we had a magic wand and could design a model from scratch, it would look a little bit different than what we're proposing, especially if we had an unlimited budget. But I think given all the constraints, this is our best effort.
Thank you.
Dan.
I'm supporting this, of course, but I wanted to just put on the record what I've heard from both from deputants today and the Tenant Advisory Committee about 2 weeks ago. It's a very healthy dose of skepticism. And I think skepticism is a good thing. It keeps us all on our toes. So don't for a minute think that any criticism of that. There's also something called benefit of the doubt, which the doubt that this is going to work or not work. And given the history that's been presented to us, I've only been here 1 year, I'm giving all the benefit of the doubt, but I'm knowing the people on this board will be very vigilant in making sure that things progress the way they should. And I'm very confident that they will, but we'll keep a little level of skepticism as do the deputants and the members of the Tenant Advisory Committee. So onward and upward, I hope.
Okay. Like Nick and Debbie and a few others, I was here for the hub models. I have to say I didn't know about the other twos and whatever the other items, processes were. I do think that this is much better planned and that you have learned from the internal audit review of how the hub model was not well planned and was not set up to succeed. And so that gives me confidence. I also think the fact that we have a pilot, which we did not have, we jumped in with both feet to build all of those hubs all at once. And, that's on all of us. But I think the fact that you have a pilot and it'll give you the ability to assess what is working and what's not working and who is being well served and who is not being well served. And it also goes back to Nick's point about, maybe we can move to option number 3 and outfit those. And that leads me to my one concern is you don't have funding right now, and we have to get funding for 2027 and 2028 for you to enable even the option number 2 to be complete. And so I just want to understand your plan B.
So I'll just weigh in and say that this is critically important. This is something that we've committed to delivering on. We actually think it's an enabling force for so many of the things that we're trying to accomplish as an organization. So although we haven't yet done the analysis to determine exactly how to reallocate if necessary, I'm happy to commit that we would look at proper reallocation of funding to make this a reality. So this is more important to me than many other things that the organization is pursuing. Not that they're not important, but I would be more than willing to undertake a prioritization reallocation if necessary.
Okay, and that makes me feel good. And I know that there is a concern about, plan is just on paper, but I do have confidence that you've learned from prior mistakes, and the way you're implementing this gives it a much better chance of success and actually operationalizing it so that it does serve the tenants. Debbie.
I agree. I think we're moving forward. I'm certainly feeling a bit more confident than we did with the hubs. All I'm asking is that you bring back to the board accurate, timely information so our decisions are truly informed.
Yes. And I think there's also been KPIs that have been defined, so we will have a better understanding of office hours and foot traffic and all of those things that we didn't before. So
unanticipated
there's no guarantees.
Exactly. But we want good information, bad. We want all the news, please.
Yes, thank you. Gord.
Yeah, first of all, I want to agree with the comments on how this is being done more carefully than the previous iteration, and I appreciate that. Just a little thing about asking Sean to develop a plan B. I just want to remind board members, there's a strategic question here about our ask of the city. And if we're too quick to show that there are other things that we can cut, we might be invited to cut those things. So for now, I think we should signal to the city that this is an important priority that improves the quality of life, not just of the tenants in these buildings, but also in those neighborhoods, and that there's a public benefit to it and that the city should fund it.
To the chair.
I think that's a very important point because we really can't afford to cut much of anything. Vanita.
Through the chair, I was just going to add to Gord's comment that there's actually, as Sean said, it has been enabling opportunity through council direction that this work could support. So hopefully we are able to articulate that in the budget process. And similarly, I tend to agree with Nick. Poorly articulated on my part. I would also lean towards 3 if we had the mystery couple million.
Maybe that's where we go in for number 3.
To the chair, to the chair, can I interrupt just for a quick? I know it's out of order.
I'm sorry, you haven't registered.
I know it's out of order. My name.
The board members.
I know. I just want to make one point.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. The board members are asking questions,
totally
and you did not
Chair.
register to depute.
Your chair. We are speaking about asking for money all the time. With these offices, the main issues are lack of staff. Has anybody considered spending money on staff?
I'm sorry, you can't.
Has anybody considered spending money on
Please turn the microphone.
staff in these offices instead of spending on construction?
Mary, can you?
No, I don't want to open a can of worms here, and it goes to what people have said in terms of asks of the city and being careful that there don't be things that be cut. I was just a bit intrigued, and I can have this discussion offline with Nadia when she said, if it weren't for the budget constraints, and of course they're always there, but she would have done some things differently. And I guess sometimes I think we put one thing first as opposed to the other. I guess what would be nice would be to see the concept of what we think would be best and would really work, and then take a look at budget. And it's putting one thing first as opposed to the other. But I'll have that discussion with Nadia offline, as I say, and I'd just be interested to see if there was anything that else. And I know they've done a really intensive look at this, but if there's anything there that she said might have been done a bit differently that we could still incorporate. I mean, we might as well go in with a full ask, and then there are certain cuts perhaps that have to happen. But anyways, I'll do that later, but it just intrigued me when she said.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other questions as it relates to the tenant service offices? Okay, so we welcome the pilot to come back, and then we'll decide what we do with our option 2 or 3. And so can I have approval to move forward and on the $293,000 spending? Benita, Dan, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. And thank you for the work that's being done. And we look forward to hearing how the pilot moves forward. So we're on to item 9B. I'm conscious of the time. Nick, this was yours, the Community Safety Unit year-end wrap-up. Yeah, that's okay. Sorry, Benita, I couldn't. Oh. 9B.
I've got a few questions, but maybe I wouldn't mind sort of getting management's views on this report, like in the sense of there's a lot of stats here. And so is things going well, poorly, what's your interpretation of them? I've got a few comments, but I'd like to sort of hear a bit sort of how we think things are going up there with quality of building and service. You know, safety is a big one. So I'd just like to get, and then I've got a couple comments a little bit more specifically, but I'd be curious in hearing management's interpretation.
Through the chair, I will throw it to our Senior Director of Community Safety, Vidal Chavans, to speak to the report.
Thanks for the question. Through the chair, it's a good question. I mean, how do I feel things are going? What I can answer you, I'll answer you this way. Clearly, we've seen another year of increasing demand. About 128,000 calls for service were processed in 2025. 65,000 of which approximately required dispatch. So we've seen some increase in demand, substantial increase since 2021, about 36%. We see increasing call volume, so it reduces our ability to get to things as quickly as we'd like. All of that said, I think we're embarking on a community safety and well-being strategy that hopefully, if we get it right, can help to bring down the demand a little bit, both by reducing some of the internal silos that exist, but also then working better with our partners externally to help drive down the demand part of the equation. The other part of this is, you know, it really doesn't matter what I think about how it's going. It's more about how the people living in TCHC buildings believe it's going, and we are constantly checking in with the tenants as well as the community surrounding TCHC to ensure that they also feel like they're safer, even if the data points to the fact that they may be physically safer.
And can I ask what you're hearing?
Certainly, yeah. Thank you for the follow-up.
The tenants? Just sorry to interrupt, Nick.
No, sure. Through the chair.
That was one of my questions.
Yeah, to be totally frank with you, the perceptions of safety are actually on the decline a little bit. And again, it's something we hope to address by better communication, I think, just in terms of the actions that we're taking, but then also being a little bit more visible in community. But to be totally frank, yeah, certainly the perceptions of safety are declining, even at a time where, you know, shootings have gone down a little bit, and we could argue that physical safety is actually a little bit better than it was before.
Yeah, there's some really interesting stats in here in my mind, like the call numbers increasing. Like, does that tell, like, what does that tell us? Because it's interesting how every year it goes up. Is more people feel comfortable calling when something happens? Is that actually a good thing that we want people calling? When I look at table 4 and I see sort of arrests, and arrests are kind of, well, actually they're down a bit, but they're still high. But going from like the trespass related arrests have doubled, which then implies that other things have declined significantly. And so like there's in my mind lots of things here that we can sort of unpack around when you think about like how to approach the problem. There's a lot of good data here that's starting to come through that we should be trying to think through tactically on how to approach, as opposed to just like things are up or down or what have you. Not sure if you have any sort of thoughts on that.
For sure. Thank you for that question, and through the chair. You're absolutely right. So you can look at an increase in calls for service and argue that that's a good thing because people are more aware of the fact the CSU exists and that we can be called if they need something addressed. What you would hope to see over the course of the next few years is that number go down because we are addressing some of the demand part of the equation. For sure. So that is our goal, of course, to drive down the calls for service, not from the perspective of people not feeling that they can, but because we're trying to avoid some of the calls for service that we do have to respond to. To your second point, we are trying to become more evidence informed. Still, you know, even with the 2025 wrap-up report, we're making progress when it comes to data analytics, but largely we are presenting counts. And so the nuance that you are discussing when it comes to looking at our data and then having that data drive our decision making is where we're hoping to get to. You know, to tie it back to an earlier conversation, we were talking about third-party security. I can talk to you about the percentage of security spend that we have for demand-based things and permanent fixtures of security. What I can't talk to you about is whether or not that investment in security is having a significant return on investment related to safety, and I hope to be able to have that conversation soon as we become a little bit more evidence-informed in our decision-making.
Thank you.
Yes, can Sean go before you?
Through the chair, just wanted to add to the questions on sentiment as well. remind the board too that many of the most significant things we're doing in community safety and well-being right now are hyper-local, and they're focused on specific communities. So, you know, this reporting looks at all aspects and all kind of calls for service and whatnot. The most substantial changes that we're seeing put into place are in, you know, 15 target communities that we've addressed, where we've done things like opening up new iHelp centers and added new partnership arrangements and added food security supports. And so I'm quite interested in how we parse those differences and look at what change or what implication is that having for those particular communities, and then how can we look to potentially scale that up to other locations. So I'm just remind people that the bulk of the work that's happening in this space right now is targeted in the communities where we think it's most necessary, but that's not necessarily what the statistics show at the moment.
Well, I think that's right on point. I think that's the right approach. But I would expect a big drop because we know there's the most activity happening in those targeted sectors, why we're targeting them. But then that should actually fall through in the stats. And I think it's too early, so I'm not suggesting it's here. But I'm hoping that is one of the results, that we do see a significant drop because we know so much is disproportionately in so few communities. Thank you.
Benita?
Yes, through the chair. I think those are excellent questions to lead off at. And Vidal, I think in your report, you really highlighted the fact that the numbers don't tell the story in and of itself. And I think that in 2 years worth of TCHC reporting was really a grounding statement, because sometimes, you know, just as we saw, we can interpret the numbers to suggest one thing over the other without correlating it to a secondary source. I will say that the two things that jump out to me relate to kind of the ongoing reporting side of things. So how will the board distinguish between genuine improvement when reduced report? Is genuine improvement going to mean reduced reporting or numbers dropping, or an increase in trust in reporting is going to drive that frequency? So thinking about that for how this evolves going forward. And then when we can expect an outcome report, which is all based on availability of data, including what Sean suggested. So how do we connect tenant experience, their lived experience, with the repeat demand and staff safety indicators?
So I'll take the beginning of that. In terms of the cadence of board reporting, we have sort of the regular biannual reporting that comes to the board. As part of the rollout of the community safety and well-being strategy, tenant engagement is part of, particularly in the pilot communities, as the CEO referenced. Tenant engagement is part of that whole process, so that will form part of the reporting that comes through the community safety and well-being strategy. So you should expect that. Excuse me, I'm trying to talk too fast. You should expect that to accompany the data as well. That will form part of the data, so that we'll be able to provide both at the same time.
Do you have other questions, Benita? No. Okay, Mary?
Yeah, this is more a comment than a question. I was just going to say what Dale talked about, the perception of tenants of not being safe. That's not unique to TCHC. If you look at what's happening in the city and the crime stats and where they're at, they're going down. Particularly homicides and gun incidents and whatever. But yet the perception in the public of unsafety seems to be going up. So it's a very, I think, complex problem to have to deal with, to change attitudes, and statistics, of course, don't really tell the whole story, because if people are feeling unsafe despite the stats, something else has to be done. So I'm just saying, I think we should see it, the TCHC experience right now, as part of a more general context as well, and it's not just TCHC. As I say, it's more of a comment, and I don't think we should be, at this point, anybody's feeling too upset about that. And hopefully, as the change in approach with CSU begins to be felt, hopefully that may well change perceptions, and we'll see. Maybe we can be a leader in terms of what sort of changes have impact in terms of feelings about public safety, but we'll see. Okay, that's it.
Are there any other questions? I had a couple. I just wanted to know, this is a change in culture, and I just wanted to have an understanding of how well you think it's being received and adopted.
Through the chair, I'm assuming you mean internally.
Mm-hmm.
Like how,
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I'll speak to it from my perspective.
Yeah, that's.
I do think it's being received well. I think, certainly on the heels of the community safety review that was done, there were some individuals that felt like that was a sort of a negative and sort of black mark that was put on the CSU. But I think over the course of time, as we've been talking about the data and talking about the fact that there are a whole bunch of nuances that exist in this world, people are on board. We talk about the CSWB strategy regularly. We have an implementation tracker that we're working on so that we can keep the data fresh. People around the team are involved in the decision-making process. I think it's helping, I hope, and we'll see. And we've had some individuals leave the organization and new ones join, and that also helps a little bit, but we want to make sure that the systems that they're engaged in also change so that we're not having the same conversation, a couple of years from now.
Okay. I appreciate that because change management is difficult. I also thought the best part of this report was the fact that you're looking to put context on the numbers. I don't like when it's just numbers because I think they're open to misinterpretation and, the number of gun incidences and stuff. And I appreciate your comments about just reducing those don't mean people feel safer in their homes, that there's a lot more going on there. And I do hope you engage with tenants to find out what their perception is and what they think needs to be done so that they feel safer. Because I think that that's very important. But I really appreciated the fact that you indicated that numbers can be misinterpreted and that more digging has to be done to put context around those numbers. And I hope that you're able to do that. Because I do think it's very important.
Through the chair, thank you for the comments. I think it's important to note, like I get to be here answering the questions, but we have a whole bunch of people at the CSU that are all working together to make sure that this happens well as the leadership that surrounds you in the inner circle there. So we're all on the same page trying to make it happen, as well as the other units that exist across the organization. Like I'm looking across it, Craig, I talk to the IT guys all the time. We're trying to figure out how to better our Wi-Fi so that we can create these dashboards so that we can have better reporting to the board. So we're all kind of working together on this. And so I do want to say that because, a lot of the questions are being directed at me, but there's a team approach here.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I appreciate that. Because I do think it's about qualitative, not just quantitative, and they have to be put in context for the board to truly understand what the implications are. Are there any other questions? Okay, can I have a motion to receive? Marcel, Dan, seconder, all in favor? Perfect. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the hearing how the work continues to go. So we will move to item 10A. That's my item. I wasn't clear on this. It's called annual compliance reporting. To me, it was a very few number of remittances, CRA, your pension. And I don't know what discussion took place at GCHRC, but I think there's a lot more to compliance than just these few items. So I'm looking to.
So through the chair, this is established practice for compliance reporting on primarily our reporting obligations, our remittances and reporting obligations.
Yeah, it's remittances, yeah.
Correct. So we're in keeping with what has been the practice in the past for that level of compliance reporting. It doesn't change the fact that we are also working on a broader compliance program for the organization that will include a variety of other things. And I've actually got an update on that I'm going to talk about in my in-camera session as well.
Okay, and that was what I was asking, and I didn't know what the discussion was at GCHRC.
Yes, so this doesn't replace the larger work that's Sean and his team is working on, but so that the board is assured that the regular annual reporting.
Yes, this is an important
happening.
part. I'm
Yeah.
not questioning that. I'm just, yes, it's the more, because it didn't come up through this, this report.
Yes, I understand that, yeah.
So I appreciate, so this is an action item that GCHRC is?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And I guess it goes to my comments about the
board, like the committee discussions that are highlighted for the board. Maybe there can be some conclusions, like if something becomes an action item, we can go through these, but a lot of them are just questions. There's no conclusions or, staff response, whether the committee was satisfied or if they've, asked for an action item to be established. So I would appreciate that for the few, we don't all go to all the committees. So anyway, thank you. I appreciate that clarification, Debbie. So can I have a motion to, I'm presuming that no one else has any questions on this item? No?
Really is just a compliance report. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's,
but I
not
get
all
your
the
point,
compliance, yeah. So can I have a motion to receive? Benita, Debbie, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. And then we have a deputation on item number 11, the Ombudsman report, human rights, and it is Joy. Joy?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much again. This is my final deputation, and first of all, I would like to thank the board, the entire team, for this opportunity today. I've learned quite a lot and was able to follow some things, most things. What I've learned today is also that the Auditor General's report actually does echo some similarities with our building, and I'm seeing some similarities also being echoed here in the meeting, whereby some of the board members are asking what is the actual experience on the ground. And I think that needs to be highlighted, because ultimately TCHC is here to support the tenants, and the lived experience, I think, needs to be highlighted. I can't stress that enough, because I see great things in the meetings and a lot of progress that's highlighted. My question though is, and it's not skepticism, it's just I'm asking about the gap between the service delivery and, some of the things that are being said. And we need to really ensure the accuracy between what tenants are saying on the ground. I think we need to pay specific emphasis on what tenants are saying on the ground, and not just glide over it, because ultimately, if we're having meetings and we have good vision, which I see here, and I'm actually very pleased with the visions. However, what needs to be in place to ensure that staff keeps up to date with the changes and the visions that management is projecting? Because what we're finding on the ground is that staff, not all staff, because for the majority of staff, the experience is great. There are a majority of staff that appear to be left behind and using old practices, and appear to be frustrated, and that is translated to a bad experience for tenants. So we need to find out how we can close that gap. And that is my closing my closing comment. Also, I would like to find out with specifics to 3171, 3180, and 3190, what has been done, or I've seen that there's been many escalations according to our staff for these buildings, but these buildings are still haven't been addressed. So I'm wondering, where are we on the list, and are we going to make it for the budget? So that is my closing question, and
I appreciate your question,
Thank you.
Joy. The item on the agenda is the human rights complaint. So I think staff will deal with your specific community questions offline. Okay.
okay, so is that the items that I mentioned, some of the things with regards to tenants' experiences, will that be included?
So through the
Because
chair,
ultimately-
Joy, I'm Nadia. Nice to meet you. I'm happy to connect with you or have
hi.
somebody from my staff connect with you with regards to the specific concerns you have about your community. So give us a couple of days and we'll reach out to you directly and get some clarification.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Nadia.
Thank you. Are there any questions for, no? Okay. Thank you very much. If there is no other business to come before the public session, can I? Oh, I have to, yes. Can I have a motion to receive the report? Thank you. Benita, Debbie, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. So if there's no other business, then I will ask for a motion to terminate the public session. Marcel was very quick to put up his hand and very high up. And Benita, thank you. All in favor?